Chapter 451. The two youths couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this situation. They completely agreed with Darling Qiao's words this time. Back then it was definitely this fellow this Tianji treasure blueprint that kept pestering their darling. Otherwise, how could she be so unreserved? Oh my, you're a divine artifact. Why did you open on your own when she injected just a little bit of mystic energy? The two of them had already secretly decided that when the little girl's mystic energy wasn't enough to form a contract with this divine artifact, they would have to provide mystic energy from the side to support her. However, the situation was just this strange. In less than 3 seconds, the little girl successfully formed a contract with the Tianji treasure blueprint. The Tianji treasure blueprint turned into a shooting star and directly entered her conscious. The two of them stared at her dumbfoundedly for a while. Arbor didn't notice at first because she was using her mystic conscious to examine the Tianji treasure blueprint in her conscious. She couldn't see anything special about it, but after this blueprint unfolded in her conscious, she could casually flip through the mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques inside. After a glance, Darling Qiao lost interest in looking at it. Those mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques were all strange drawings that looked like scribbles. The few words were also abstruse and profound, so who could understand such a ghastly thing? When she returned to her senses, she saw the two youths looking at her with shining eyes in a daze. Our dear Qiao Mu simply didn't know that with her pitiful cultivation as a level 8 mystic cultivator, it was basically impossible for her to form a contract with this kind of divine artifact without assistance from the side. He had never seen or heard of such an oddball like her. Ahem. Duanyu coughed lightly and said with a chuckle, "This is probably fate, right, huh? Isn't that right, Prince Emo?" The Tianji treasure blueprint must have taken a fancy to the little girl. How should he put it? Emo Lien glanced at him and nodded in rare agreement. Qiao Mu was baffled. She didn't even know what the heck they were conversing about. She merely activated her mystic conscious and summoned that Tianji treasure blueprint out from her conscious. The mechanisms and concealed weapon techniques on this are all scribbles. You can see for yourselves. She couldn't understand it anyway. Immediately after, with a move of his profound sense, the Tianji treasure blueprint suddenly unfolded in front of the three of them. It stretched for several meters and was covered in golden light. The diagrams leaped up and floated in front of the three of them. The two youths hurriedly ran over and stood on the left and right sides of the picture. They looked at it for a while with an intoxicated look on their faces. Arbor. Blame her for being uncultured. Jojo, how about I make a copy of it? The two teenagers asked in unison. How? With a flip of their hands, they each took out a piece of jade. Arbor ran over to take a look and hurriedly asked, "Isn't this the underworld jade, something used to pass on techniques?" Of course not. Duanyu couldn't help but chuckle. These two pieces are ordinary crimson jade and purple jade. The kind of netherworld jade you speak of can only be discovered by chance. Not only can it be used to inherit secret techniques, but it can also be used to nourish the conscious. TSK, where can I get one? Qiao Mu once again exposed her lack of culture, so she didn't say anything else. Of course she wouldn't ask them how to make a copy. She might as well keep the Tianji treasure blueprint open and let them work on their own. This Baobao is a great talisman master. When this Baobao draws talismans, none of you can understand it. Hence, the two youths each stood on one side of the picture. Chapter 452. Using a strand of mystic conscious as a guide, Emo Lien and Duanyu recorded the contents of the Tianji treasure blueprint into the crimson jade and the cub jade without missing a single word. They didn't even miss a tiny mark. Then they flipped through the blueprints and discovered that they were all complete. Only then did the three of them say a few more words and leave to rest. The next morning, when Arbor rolled over and opened her eyes, she sensed that there was someone in the room. She lifted her eyes and saw Murong Sun standing by the window. Murong Sun turned around when she saw her moving and smiled at her. "You're awake, Master." Arbor rubbed her eyes and rolled out of the blanket that was wrapped in a cocoon. "Master and your Ant Masters are about to set off now." Murong Sun walked to the bedside and naturally pulled the little girl to sit in front of the dressing mirror as usual. She took a comb and helped the little girl comb her messy long hair before skillfully coiling her hair into a knot. "Master hasn't taught you too many things or given you anything good in all these years. You're a hard-working child and rarely make master worry. You can keep this. Murong-sun quickly put a jade bracelet on the little girl's left wrist. The jade bracelet was engraved with a jade-colored pine tree. It was flawlessly white and sparkled with a jade-like white light. Arbor was originally a bit sleepy, but she was completely startled awake now. She looked down at the jade bracelet on her wrist. How could she not recognize it? This was clearly the key to opening Maple Pavilion. Master! Arbor stood up and nearly bumped into Murong-sun's chin. Are you saying your last words? She wasn't stupid. Don't think she didn't hear Murong-sun's words as if she was saying her last words. Why would she give her the key to Maple Pavilion without rhyme or reason? Nonsense. Murong-sun heavily smacked Arbor's head. What nonsense are you spouting? Your master is very strong, don't joke around. Who on Seikong planet has the ability to kill me? Then this. Murong-sun brusquely glanced at her. This is an early coming-of-age gift for you. That's all master can do. Nonsense, this is the symbol of the previous sect masters. Arbor was so nervous that his eyes were almost red. Moreover, she was not even 13 years old yet. There were still at least 2 years to go before her coming-of-age ceremony. Why was her master in such a hurry to give her a present in advance? Anyway, you don't have to worry about it. Just take it since I'm giving it to you. Why are you so talkative? I don't usually see you talkative, but you're really annoying today. Master, I'll go back to the sect with you, the little girl said immediately. You lass, you're so young yet so long-winded. Tell me, how many years have you not been home? Your mother and father might even think that our holy water sect is a man-eating sect that abducts children and doesn't even let them return home. Murong-sun poked her little head with a finger and couldn't resist laughing. I already said I'm fine. You just like to let your imagination run wild all day and worry too much. All right, master really has to set off. You should also quickly pack up and go home. Master! The little fellow shouted loudly. Murong-sun looked down at her with a grin and couldn't resist teasing. What, aren't I just telling you to go home? You can't bear to part with master? You're not lying to me. Of course, when have you ever seen master lying to you? Murong-sun patted her little head with a smile and hugged her little body, gently patting her back. Master will never lie to you. Chapter 453. Murong-sun pulled Arbor back to her stool in disbelief. After combing her long hair, Murong-sun hugged her. All right, master has to leave. You're alone, so you have to take good care of yourself on the road and hurry home, okay? Arbor furrowed her brows and nodded hesitantly. That's a good girl. An obedient child is a good child. All right, master's leaving. Be good by yourself. Murong-sun nodded in satisfaction and forcefully pulled her gaze away from her. She turned around and left without even looking back. Soon, the Holy Water Sect's team set off. Arbor ran out and stood at the door in a daze, feeling that something was off. She saw the 3 peak masters leading everyone away. Yang Shirong and Lu Yun turned around and waved at her. Everyone's faces were brimming with smiles as they waved goodbye to her. Arbor felt very uncomfortable and stood at the door in a daze for a long time. It wasn't until Emolien called her softly that she returned to her senses and turned her head to look at him. What is it? Did something happen? Emolien grasped her hand and gently squeezed it. Arbor thought about it but still shook her head. Are you leaving now? He had left for so long, so it was time for him to return to the capital. How about I send you back to Shizhou City? Emolien asked with a smile. Huifeng appeared next to the crown prince like a ghost and said icily and mechanically, Your Highness, the great king orders you to return within 3 days. 3 days? Can we fly? Even if we can fly, we can't fly to the capital. Emolien grumpily retorted. At this time, the great king was in the southern study, tossing a pile of tattered memorials onto the floor with a headache. Did you send an urgent message from 800 miles away? Did the crown prince reply to me? Did he say when he would return? Gongchang and miserably kneeled on the floor and repeatedly shook his head. This old servant already sent 2 more memorials. This unfilial son. The great king was so angry that he wanted to smash the teacup. Only then did he realize that the teacup had already been smashed, and the eunuchs had just cleaned up the floor. Why did you leave so many things for me to deal with? Gongchang and wept silently. Great King, you've been suppressing these matters for the past few days. You really can't blame His Highness the Crown Prince. In the past, didn't this unfilial son do things rather quickly? He finished reading 3 days' worth of memorials in half a day. Why are there so many of them today? Come and take a look. Why was this He Qijing from the Ministry of Works complaining about being poor again? Every month you have to reach out and ask for food from me. I'm about to eat chaff myself. Gong Chang'an. He really didn't want to bother with the furious king. Can't you ask him to step down? In the past, when the Crown Prince was handling state affairs, there was never such a big commotion. One moment the cup was smashed, the next moment the brush washer was also smashed. Gong Chang, and felt that it was really not easy to be in their line of work. Go over and ask if that unfilial son has sent a letter back. Did he say when he would return? The Great King raised his brush and drew a cross on He Qijing's memorial. Want your sister's food? Don't have it. Great King, you've already asked 5 times today. Save me. Huifeng looked at his master with a different expression. He didn't say anything and merely watched silently. Master, if you take a detour to Shizhou City, then 3 days definitely won't be enough to return to the capital. You and Little Snow should return to the capital. Arbor reached out to stroke the snow leopard's large head, who was squeezed between the two of them. Little Snow is fast on her feet, so 3 days might not be enough. She should be able to return in 4 or 5 days. I'm not in a hurry, Emolian said softly. Chapter 454. Huifeng moved his lips, but Emolian cast him a chilly glance, and he immediately shut his mouth. No need. Arbor had other plans in his mind, and he unfurled his brows slightly. He nodded at him and said, Go back as soon as possible. I'll go home by myself. At this time Duan Yu and Situ-Yi led the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Tao sect to bid her farewell. Wei Nanfeng waved his hand at her and said with a smile, Little miss, I don't know when we'll meet again after parting today. Big brother will solemnly apologize to you for our past matters. Let's bury the hatchet. You can't treat me as an enemy when we meet again. Shoo shoo shoo, where did this big brother come from? Duan Yu irritably glared at him. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Wei Nanfeng and nodded reluctantly. Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but be overjoyed, and he cast a smug look at Emolian. How is it? This brother has a sharp tongue, so I'm pretty good at dealing with people, right? Scram. Emolian rolled her eyes at him. Alright, you can all leave. I'm going home anyway. Let's bid farewell here, everyone. Arbor suppressed his thoughts, but he didn't show it on his face. When they were bidding farewell, Xixia Valley's Valley Master also walked over with his 2 personal disciples and said with a smile, We just sent off the Holy Water Sect group, so you'll also be leaving. Let's bid farewell together. Everyone cupped their hands in salute and politely bade farewell to Xixia Valley's Valley Master. Xixia Valley's Valley Master looked at these youthful youths with a smile. These were the future experts of the sect, the cornerstones of the sect. Situ-Yi smiled at Arbor and said with a nod, Jojo, we'll meet again in the future. Take good care of yourself on the road. You can come visit our Heavenly Tao sect when you're free. Goodbye, senior brother Situ. Arbor nodded. Duan Yu turned around and gazed deeply at her, as if he wanted to imprint this glance into his eyes forever. The youth didn't say anything else and turned to leave with the people from the Daybreak sect and Heavenly Tao sect. The small courtyard emptied out at once. Emolian and Arbor looked at each other and clasped their hands together. If you're not in a hurry after returning home, then don't return to the Holy Water sect for now. How about you come to Guanlan City to play? Emolian gazed at her with a grin. Guanlan City is really fun. When the time comes, I'll take you out for a stroll and eat good food. Arbor gave him a I'm not a foodie look and nodded slightly at him as a form of agreement. Emolian's face was full of joy. He raised his hand and patted her little head. Then it's settled. I'll wait for you. Yes. Arbor's eyes moved and he nodded. Emolian didn't know that his I'll wait for you had been waiting for a long time. He had waited so long that his heart was broken and cold to the bone. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let her go today. He raised his hand and hugged her. It was just a gentle hug, and then he let go. He didn't know that a long time had passed since he turned and left. If he had known, He wouldn't have let go even if he died. He wouldn't. Arbor looked at the empty small courtyard and abruptly started to leave. She felt that Master and Aunt Master must be hiding something from her. She felt that something must have happened to the sect. She decided to stealthily follow them back to take a look and follow her heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to settle down. The little fellow wanted to chase after them, but her figure suddenly swayed after 2 steps, and she clutched her chest with an unsightly expression. Chapter 455. Miss Chow, what's wrong with you? Wuxia Valley's Valley Master hastily rushed up and supported her nearly collapsing figure. Your cultivation realm is unstable. This is a sign that you're about to advance. You've been suppressing your cultivation realm to advance? No, your body can't take it anymore. You have to enter closed-door cultivation immediately. Just stay in our Wuxia Valley. Don't worry, I'll send disciples to guard you. I'll bring you to a secluded place. No, You can't. Wuxia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang also panicked. You're immature, child, but I can't allow you to continue like this. If you continue suppressing it, your mystic meridians will be affected in the future. If it gets serious, it will affect your lifeline. If your master knew, she would definitely be heartbroken. Child, why are you doing this? Valley Master, I have a very important matter. One Dan, help your little junior sister to my cultivation room and guard her well. Valley Master, Little junior sister, listen to my master. Even if I let you leave our Wuxia Valley like this, you won't be able to hold on halfway. When Dan hastily sent the other 2 female disciples a look and half-carried Arbor away, Wuxia Valley's Valley Master sighed heavily. Murong Sun, I can only help you to this extent. Emolian sat on the snow leopard's back. After exiting the valley, she asked Huifeng, who was straddling the wind wolf, have Ao Yi and his team arrived yet? They're already outside the valley. They'll accompany Miss back to Shizhou City. Emolian was silent for a moment before saying, I keep feeling like something's going on. Chow Chow's gaze didn't seem right. Moreover, Murong Sun's group left too hastily. Although they left with smiles and even greeted each other when they saw them, he kept feeling like Emolian considered it for a few seconds before pointing and saying, You go inform Mei Yi and have him investigate what exactly happened to Holy Water Sect these past 2 days. He frowned as he recalled that day in the arena. A female disciple named Yi Lingmin drank a few drops of water and quickly advanced. Apparently, the Holy Water Sect has a holy water spring. Have Mei Yi investigate this matter. Also, find some people to follow me to the Holy Water Sect to take a look. Yes. Huifeng always felt that the Crown Prince was worrying too much about the Holy Water Sect. The 3 sects and 5 factions were all big sections. What could possibly happen to them? Hurry up and do it. The Crown Prince frowned and urged. This subordinate will inform them now. On the other side, not long after the Holy Water Sect's party left Wuxia Valley with smiles on their faces, their charming faces darkened one by one. Doya, stay here and keep watch. If you see your little junior sister come out, make her stay no matter what, Murong Sun said aloofly. She understood this disciple of hers all too well. She definitely wouldn't leave the matter at that. Wuxia Valley's Valley Master might not necessarily be able to stop her. Eldest martial uncle, I want to go back with you. Doya's eyes immediately reddened as she shook her head and said loudly, Doya, your eldest martial uncle is right. You can't go back to Holy Water Sect with us. Lu Yun said seriously, You forgot that you are the Alava tribe's clan leader. Your father, as well as your young brother and sister, are all looking forward to your early return. Murong Sun nodded and turned to look at Su Shanshan. Shanshan, you take. Master, don't think of chasing me away. This disciple has been following Master since I was 5 and practicing martial arts in the Holy Water Sect. The Holy Water Sect is this disciple's home. This disciple has no other place to go. Su Shanshan said calmly. We vow to live and die with the Holy Water Sect. All the disciples shouted in unison. It's over. See you tomorrow. Chapter 456. Gurgle. The small ice bead jumped out of Arbor's waist pocket and hovered in the air, emitting a gentle light. Master, the more unstable your emotions are, the more it will affect your advancement. Why don't you quickly restrain your emotions and enter closed-door cultivation? Quickly come out after you've advanced. Lady Holywater's soft and adorable voice rang out. Arbor sat upright in the small room that Shisha Valley's Valley Master usually used for cultivation. Her forehead was drenched in a cold sweat. Just as Lady Holywater had said, the current situation was indeed disadvantageous to her and the sect. She could only advance as quickly as possible and hurry back in order to shorten the time to the greatest extent. If she continued to struggle, it would only do her more harm than good. When she thought of this, Arbor took a deep breath and held her breath, blocking off her 5 senses. 10 intermediate-level blue calming talismans flew out from her fingertips. Intermediate-level talisman, blue calming talisman. For 8 hours it would allow the person to rapidly concentrate and calm their mind, achieving the goal of doubling the mystic energy absorbed from the outside world. Lady Holywater instantly entered Arbor's Dantian mystic domain. She circled around the remaining essence water and emitted a faint aura, accelerating this bit of essence water to fuse with Masta's mystic domain as quickly as possible. After 1 day and night, Arbor finally successfully entered the state of advancement. All the mystic energy within a radius of 300 meters in Shisha Valley was mobilized and swarmed towards her small cultivation room at a terrifying speed. Shisha Valley's Valley Master and his personal disciple, Wendan, stood outside the small room and looked up ruefully at the mystic energy that had already condensed into a large nebula. Peak Master Murong's last disciple is truly remarkable. Who knows how much she'll grow if she's given several years. Shisha Valley's Valley Master sighed. Master, are we really unable to help with the holy water sex matter? Wendan couldn't bear to look at the tightly shut small room. Little junior sister is exceptionally intelligent. I feel that she already knows about this matter. Shisha Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang heaved a long sigh. I had the 5 elders lead the 50 disciples over. It can only be said that I'm merely showing my sincerity. Master is also the person at the helm of Shisha Valley, so I must consider my own sect. I also can't let your martial uncles and senior brothers and sisters make some meaningless sacrifices. Disciple understands. Wendan nodded with a heavy heart. Master, are the people of the 6 prefectures really an existence that we can't surpass? No. Luo Jinyang shook his head and raised his hand. He said firmly, I believe that one day someone will surpass them. You young children have outstanding talent and excellent qualifications. As long as you work hard enough and believe in the future, surpassing others is not a daydream. Master, this disciple will definitely work even harder. Wendan nodded heavily. It's just that junior sister will probably be alone and helpless in the future. It's too pitiful. Master, why don't we secretly leave her in Shisha Valley? This child. I don't think we can keep it. Luo Jinyang looked funny on the surface, but he knew better than anyone else. Shisha Valley simply couldn't keep Arbor. This little girl was bound to soar high in the future. The 6 prefectures making a move today might not necessarily be a good thing. The world was in turmoil, and danger lurked everywhere. What would happen in the future would depend on each person's fortune. 3 days later, Xiaomu opened her apathetic eyes. After completely assimilating with her essence water, her cultivation had already broken through what people called the Great Mystic Cultivator threshold, level 10. Moreover, she was steadily climbing to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator entry level. Chapter 457. Arbor's cold gaze revealed a trace of intense killing intent as the vortexes in the depths of her eyes spun like star fragments. She used her inner vision and saw that the second branch meridian in her body had already formed, but she was in no mood to pay attention to it right now. The Spirit Division Record's Soul Chapter had already officially entered the 3rd layer, tempering the progress of her 2nd and 3rd branch meridians. At this time, her 1st branch meridian had already expanded to the same width as her main meridian, about a finger's width. She could completely condense all the mystic energy in her branch meridian into mystic conscious, open a complete inner world, or use her mystic eyes. It would no longer affect the consumption of mystic energy in her main meridian during battle. In other words, if an ordinary level 11 mystic cultivator could condense 50% of their mystic energy into mystic conscious during battle, it would already be considered a high-level condensation of mystic conscious. then her mystic conscious definitely wouldn't exceed the 6th level of the mystic realm. Our dear Xiao Mu, however, could condense all the mystic energy in her first branch meridian into mystic conscious. At the same time that her cultivation entered the great level 11 mystic cultivator realm, her mystic conscious also reached the 11th level of the mystic realm. Thus, those great level 11 mystic cultivators in the same batch as her basically couldn't compare to her in battle. Entering the cultivation of a great level 11 mystic cultivator meant that Arbor could finally contract mystic beasts. But right now she wasn't in the mood to go to the mystic beast forest to find any powerful mystic beasts. Just as she was about to get up, she saw a snow-white ball tear open the void and rush out. Startled, Arbor didn't have time to ponder why the little white squirrel could rush out of Paradise Planet on its own when she suddenly felt a slight pain in her finger. Looking down, she saw a drop of blood seeping out and merging with the snow-white ball's drop of blood. Suddenly, it emitted a dazzling and strange light. A circle of totem contract characters appeared above the human and beast's heads, flickering back and forth. Light and shadow flickered back and forth. The contract characters formed a circle of constantly swimming tadpole-like characters, and gradually shrank to the size of a ring before abruptly landing beside the defensive ring. At this time, in addition to the defensive ring on Arbor's middle finger, there was an additional pitch-black, lusterless contract ring engraved with transparent embossed inscriptions on her index finger. This was beyond her expectations. Arbor simply didn't expect that the little white squirrel would suddenly rush out of Paradise Planet and successfully form a contract with her after she successfully advanced to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator. She actually didn't like cute beasts. She liked wild beasts like the snow leopard or the 7-star white tiger. This way she could feel a little more secure. She liked strong and healthy companions like this. They could accompany her as she grew up and walked through a prosperous life. But now every mystic cultivator could only contract with one mystic beast in their lifetime. This was a clear rule. Therefore, Arbor wasn't as angry as she imagined. In fact, she should be angry. This little beast didn't ask for her opinion at all and contracted with her on its own. However, Arbor had always been more lenient towards partners who had been together for a long time. If she wanted to form a contract, then so be it. At most, she would use the summoning talisman to summon 2 more beasts in the future. The premise was that the summoning talisman wasn't a scam. "Master, are you angry?" A small and timid voice emerged from the depths of her mind. This was the convenience of forming a contract with a beast. Even if you formed a contract with a low-level little mystic beast, as long as the contract was successful, the master and beast would be able to communicate mentally without any hindrance. Chapter 458. Shouldn't I be angry? Arbor's voice was cold as she replied. The small voice was almost about to cry. "I'm sorry, Master. I want to accompany Master forever. I will work hard to recover, Master. I will become very tired." Finally, the timid voice became weaker and weaker, as if it didn't have much confidence in itself. Arbor waved her hand at the little white squirrel curled up by her feet. The little guy's bean-like eyes suddenly lit up, and with a whoosh it jumped into her arms. Little Furry's face was filled with happiness as it rolled around in her arms. "Actually, I'm not that strong either." Arbor stroked the little white squirrel's fur in a rare moment of attentiveness, her voice indifferent as she said, "If I were strong enough, perhaps she wouldn't have fallen into today's passive situation." She stood up and her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her mystic sense naturally condensed in front of her eyes, turning into 2 invisible palms that pushed open the door to her inner world. She saw that her inner world, which was about 15 cubic meters in size, had expanded by more than 10 times. The originally 3-story golden mountain of jewels had now revealed its original appearance. It turned out that it had only revealed the tip of the iceberg at the beginning. Now this golden mountain of jewels was so tall that one couldn't see the end of it. Her tiny mystic sense avatar stood at the foot of the mountain, as insignificant as a speck of dust. Her food box. Arbor's mystic sense moved, and that delicately carved red sandalwood food box suddenly flew out from under the mountain of jewels, swiftly appearing in her palm. Arbor let out a small sigh of relief. The mystic sense condensed in her branch meridians could finally allow her to retrieve things from her inner world without any hindrance. Her two small hands used a bit of force to open the lid of the food box. There were still 10 white, chubby, and cute meat buns steaming with steam, neatly arranged in the food box. There was a line of lollipops in the gaps. Yes, when she saw this little thing, the word lollipop had inexplicably appeared in her mind. It was as if someone had once held this little thing and waved at her with a smile, coaxing her to eat it. Arbor hugged the lunchbox and sat down. For some reason he felt a little sad. It was only when her profound sense entered the food box that she clearly realized how big the space inside was. No matter how many meat buns you took out, there seemed to be an endless supply of them. What was even more frightening was that there weren't just buns inside. She used her mystic sense to casually flip through the contents and took out several plates of soup and vegetables with different flavors. It looked like a very powerful lunchbox. It seemed that all the food in the restaurants around the world had been swept clean by it. She felt that as long as she hugged this lunchbox, even if she had never gotten anything in her life, she would not die of hunger or thirst. Master! Little Chocho's timid voice brought her back from her silence and daze. Arbor subconsciously reached out to touch his cold little face. He took out a spoon, drank a few mouthfuls of soup, and ate a few spoonfuls of rice. His eyes were a little red. Chirp, chirp. Arbor hugged the little thing and muttered to herself, I seem to have forgotten something very, very important. I can't remember it no matter how hard I try. Master, don't worry. Slowly you'll remember. The little white squirrel rubbed against her chest. I hope so. Arbor put down the spoon. Chapter 459. Arbor set down the soup ladle and put away the food she had eaten into her inner world. Only then did she close the lid of the food box. She hugged the food box for a short while before moving it back into her inner world. Her current inner world was about 180 cubic meters. An ordinary mystic cultivator's inner world was only about 3 to 5 cubic meters. They needed to continuously train and increase their mystic conscious before they could expand their inner world. It was considered pretty good if they could expand their inner world to more than 10 cubic meters on their own. Thus, Arbor stared at her inner world in a daze for a long time. At that time, Fanshoha's cultivation was much higher than hers. Fanshoha was already a level 12 great mystic cultivator, but strangely, her inner world was bigger than his. It was more than half the size, exceeding 20 cubic meters. At that time, this kind of inner world could already be considered a wondrous inner world. But compared to her current inner world, it really paled in comparison. Arbor could only chuckle. Her mystic conscious crossed the jewels and gold mountain that reached the top of the barrier, and saw the pair of stone statues that she had been longing to see again. No, it wasn't a pair. Arbor was dumbstruck. She stared at them for a long time. There were actually many similar stone statues. They were arranged in 8 horizontal rows. She was momentarily dazzled when she looked at them and actually couldn't see the end. Our dear Xiaomu was stunned for a while. She shifted her mystic conscious all the way over and carefully counted. She discovered that there were as many as 800 pairs of stone statues that were as tall as a 3-story building. At the back of the stone statues, there was a lone statue that looked completely different from the other stone statues. Its body was spiraling sideways, and its head was in the posture of howling at the sky. There seemed to be 2 bulging bumps on its head. A figure spiraling upward like this? Arbor's eyes abruptly contracted. She tried to use her mystic conscious to shift this statue out, but a piercing pain suddenly assaulted her mind. She quickly pulled her mystic conscious out of her inner world, and threw her apparition into her conscious to continue cultivating before closing the door to her inner world. Only then did she let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed that with his mystic sense, there was no problem for him to casually take out things like food boxes and jewelry, but to move such a large sculpture, he was afraid that it was still not enough. The larger the object, the heavier it was. If he wanted to take it out of his inner world, he would have to use up an enormous amount of mystic consciousness. He still hadn't reached the required level yet. It was just that. That coiled body, twisting and turning, looked very awkward. Could it be a big snake? At the thought that there might be a snake condor in her inner world, Xiaomu felt uncomfortable all over. She felt uncomfortable everywhere. Arbor shivered inwardly, and his heart was suddenly filled with anger. Why did she fear such a dark and twisted thing from the bottom of her heart? No. One day, he had to make a trip to the Mystic Beast Forest. When the time came, he had to overcome this fear. Otherwise, once his enemies learned of this weakness, he would probably suffer in secret in the future. After making up his mind, Arbor tidied himself up and walked out of the cultivation room with the little white squirrel in his arms. Xixia Valley's Valley Master Luo Jinyang, who had heard the news, quickly walked toward her with his personal disciple, Wen Dan. Little junior sister, congratulations on successfully advancing. Wen Dan's gaze flickered as he sized her up. What are you doing? Luo Jinyang's gaze revealed admiration. Your little junior sister's current cultivation is one level higher than yours. You naturally can't see through her cultivation. Chapter 460. Level 11? When Dan was shocked. Little junior sister, you leaped to become a level 11 great mystic cultivator? The advancement speed of Holy Water Sect's disciples was indeed shockingly frightening. Little junior sister was only a level 8 mystic cultivator before, so this large leap simply stunned everyone. She wasn't even 13 years old this year, but she already became a level 11 great mystic cultivator that many people yearned for even in their dreams. This was simply no harm without comparison. Once they did, they would feel that other people's talent was filled with eerie malice toward them. Arbor expressionlessly nodded and said to Xixia Valley's Valley Master, Good Valley Master, Senior Sister 1, I'll be leaving now. Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. Farewell. Little junior sister, where are you going? When Dan asked with fear and trepidation, Senior Sister 1, why ask when you already know the answer? Arbor aloofly said, I've already been delayed in Xixia Valley for 4 to 5 days, so I hope you two won't obstruct me again. You're wasting what little time I have left. Little junior sister, why bother? When Dan looked at her with knitted brows and said, Even if you go back, it won't make any difference. Miss Xiao Qiao, in truth, I've already sent some people to your holy water sect 4 days ago. But did you know? Those people I sent out, I expected them to not come back. On the day I left, I told them that this rescue mission would undoubtedly fail. Arbor's small fists had already unconsciously clenched tightly. Good Valley Master, be more careful in the future and don't be a goody two-shoes anymore. After I leave, take your disciples and find another place to live in seclusion for a period of time. Little junior sister. When Dan was anxious. Our Xixia Valley isn't afraid of trouble. We're not afraid of being implicated by you. The disciples of Xixia Valley who came after hearing the commotion all looked up at the plain-clothed little girl standing on Qingluan. They felt that the little girl's plain-clothed appearance was as cold as ice. Xixia Valley's Valley Master said, Miss Qiao, please reconsider. Your master Murong Suan Shi. Xixia Valley's Valley Master hadn't even finished speaking when he saw the large azure bird circle once in the air before flapping its wings and flying towards the sky. Arbor stood steadily on Blue Luan's back, his belt fluttering as he reached out and cupped his fists slightly towards everyone expressionlessly. Good person Valley Master. Fellow brothers and sisters of Xixia Valley, I, Arbor, will remember today's grace in my heart. When we meet again in the future, I will definitely repay this kindness. Goodbye. Screech. Qingluan let out a long cry. Finally, it was no longer suppressed by its little master. It spread out its wings that were tens of meters long and rushed into the distant sky with a whoosh. Luo Jinyang raised his head and sent her off with his gaze, his eyes revealing a trace of appreciation. Although Miss Qiao is young, she is extremely intelligent. I hope she'll be fine. Master. Wen Dan. Pass down the order for the entire valley to make preparations. We will leave Xixia Valley today and head to the clan's secret grounds to stay for a while. Yes. Qingluan pierced through layers of clouds and flew out of Xixia Valley at an extremely fast speed. Aoyi and his group, who were guarding outside Xixia Valley, had waited for a long time until today. They almost thought that Miss Qiao wanted to stay in Xixia Valley for a while longer. Suddenly, they saw a large bird rushing out of Xixia Valley. Aoyi was startled and abruptly jumped out from his hiding spot. It's Miss? What direction is that? Captain, that doesn't seem to be the direction of Shizhou City. Chapter 461. Aoyi jumped up. That's in the direction of the Holy Water Sect. Why is Miss going to the Holy Water Sect? Didn't His Highness say that she wanted to go home? Don't worry about that. Quickly follow her. Oh, he was so anxious that he stomped his feet. He hastily commanded everyone to board the flying mystic beasts and chase after her. However, Qinghuan was extremely fast and was already 50 kilometers away in the blink of an eye. Even if they chased after her, they would be half a beat slower. Oh, he was so anxious that he was fuming. He slapped his teammate who was riding the flying mystic beast. Make it fly faster. It's already the fastest, Captain. Arbor activated her defensive mystic weapon with a wave of her hand and shielded herself from the fierce winds in the sky. She didn't know that Aoyi and the rest had chased after her day and night. She only sat quietly inside the defensive barrier and took out a large handful of ebony to draw talismans piece by piece. Her expression was as calm as water, and no one could see any change in her expression. However, her eyes were focused on silently carving talismans. One talisman after another, except for a few moments when she slept on Qinghuan's back and opened her eyes, she began to silently draw talismans again. She drew talismans one after another until her eyes turned red, but she was still oblivious. 300 ebony blue binding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level binding talisman matrices. These intermediate-level binding talisman matrices made from ebony could bind around 10 people at once, provided that their cultivation was equal to or lower than hers. 300 ebony blue mystic guiding talismans could form 5 intermediate-level mystic guiding talisman matrices. Within an hour, she would continuously absorb the mystic energy in the world into her body to replenish her rapidly depleting mystic energy. After crossing the Great Swamp, Arbor was basically in a state where she could kill anything in her way. Whoever dared to stop her from returning to the sect would die without a doubt. Thus, when Aoyi and the rest rushed to the Great Swamp, they were simply stunned by the mess of corpses in the swamp. All the zombie crocodiles were beyond recognition. Most of them had their heads chopped off, and many of them were frozen into ice sculptures erected at the edge of the swamp. Later on, they didn't see any more zombie crocodiles causing trouble. They were probably afraid of this short-tempered little girl and quietly dispersed. In less than 6 days, Xiao Mu directly exited the Great Swamp and arrived at that adventurer base from back then. Qinghuan really needed to rest. It had been flying day and night without sleep for so many days and nights. Arbor felt sorry for it. When they entered the adventurer's base, Arbor put it away and let it sleep on her shoulder. She went straight to the market to find someone to buy a horse. No matter what, the earlier the better. She prepared a horse and rode towards Wuyu City. She would wait for Qinghuan to wake up before flying. Calculating the time, she estimated that she would be able to rush back in 7 days. This was already the fastest speed she could achieve on this trip. It was all because of the existence of Qinghuan. Otherwise, it would be impossible. I'm buying a horse. A cold voice rang out in the bustling market. Everyone turned to look, and when they saw the little girl's snow-white and frosty appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. There was a lot of turnover in the adventurer's base. The little girl hadn't come for so many days, and the people doing business in the market had already changed. Yo, little girl, where are you going to buy a horse? A second-rate voice rang out from behind, causing a series of men to laugh maliciously. Arbor's gaze turned cold. Chapter 462. Back then, when she followed Emolien to the bazaar, it was obvious that the crown prince wasn't easy to deal with. From start to finish, no one dared to cause trouble for them. So, it was because she looked easy to provoke? TSK, what a beautiful little lady. Coming to our adventurer base alone. Are you looking for a husband? Ha 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 ha. Laughter rang out around them. Someone even joked, how many husbands does this little lady want? Soon after, a wretched howl was heard. Everyone's laughter seemed to be stuck in their throats as they stared dumbfoundedly. The loafer who was the first to tease her was actually kicked away by the little girl. His whole body flipped in the air and smashed into someone else's horse trough. His head was bruised and bleeding, and he was groaning in pain. The horse neighed in fright. Without another word, Arbor tossed out a handful of Duan Yu's shooting star powder. That loafer screamed several times, but before he could get up, he fell back down heavily and died miserably on the ground. 18 small nails had appeared on his face, body, and limbs. One of them hit between his brows, seeking his soul. Kill in one step. This time all the teasing passers-by all sucked in a cold breath and took a step back. This little lady's attack was truly ruthless, taking a life in an instant. As expected, those who dared to come to the adventurer base alone weren't easy to deal with. The men who had just teased that loafer and asked Arbor how many husbands she wanted quickly shrunk their necks and left dejectedly. Boss Ma was also trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl in front of him, whose face was covered with frost and whose body was emitting a chill that came from the depths of her bones. Arbor tossed him a mid-grade magnetite. "Pick out the best horse for me. It's going to be a long journey." Yes. How could this little great aunt be trifled with? Boss Ma naturally didn't dare to cheat her, so he quickly picked out the sturdiest horse and handed it to Arbor. Arbor mounted the horse. She had barely taken 2 steps with a flick of her wrist when 5 to 6 local ruffians holding clubs noisily came over from the road ahead. "Who is it? Which little bitch killed my brother? Come out immediately." Boss Ma quickly hid behind the stable and peeked, shaking his head and sighing in his heart. These local tyrants had been in the adventurers' base for a long time. They had formed a small gang and often extorted ordinary merchants. However, today they had probably kicked an iron plate. The little grandaunt's eyes flashed with anger. Suddenly, a jet-black feral appeared in front of her eyes and leaped forward. "Those who block the way will die." Xiao Mu swatted her feral down, immediately smacking the head of the local thug into his neck. When the remaining 4 or 5 little ruffians saw this, they were so scared that they peed in their pants. Their legs trembled, and they knelt down on the ground with soft knees. "Great aunt, please spare us, great aunt, please spare us." Arbor straddled his horse and held a feral in his hand. His body was full of killing intent as his eyes swept across both sides of the road. This time no one dared to come out and throw their lives away. They all trembled and scrambled to the corners. When a spacious road appeared in the middle, the vendors on both sides were scared out of their wits. They hurriedly moved their stalls to the corners, afraid that they would block this little great aunt's path. Arbor pulled the horse's reins and scolded. When she pulled back, the horse galloped forward and disappeared in front of everyone in a flash. Chapter 463. After about 7 to 8 minutes, everyone finally calmed down from their fright. They looked at each other and saw the deep terror on each other's faces. This truly was a little fiend who wanted to take their lives. They blamed themselves for not bringing their eyes with them on the road. These days, not just anyone could be provoked. She might look like a soft little girl, but in reality, she was even more frightening than a demon god. After Arbor rushed out of the adventurer base, she galloped toward 5 Moon City. She galloped all the way until the second night, when the horse was about to foam at the mouth, before she finally stopped and switched to Qingyuan to fly in the sky again. However, it was already a bit late. At this moment, the Holy Water sect welcomed a subversive, all-around crisis. Luigi and Qiu San brought a total of more than 700 people from Shuntian Prefecture's forces on Sikong Planet. They arrived at the Holy Water sect's mountain gate a day ago and encountered Ani Prefecture's assistant manager, Hong Jinchuan, who rushed over after hearing the news. At that time, Luigi's expression was very unsightly, but after careful consideration, he reached an agreement with Hong Jinchuan. The two sides planned to first take down the Holy Water sect and find the sacred water. Then, they would see who the sacred water favored and pass peacefully. Of course, whether the other side would be unconvinced and start fighting at that time was another matter. At least for now, Shuntian Prefecture's Luigi and Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan could be considered to have reached a preliminary agreement. In merely one night, these people slaughtered many Holy Water sect disciples like wolves and tigers. When Murong Sun's group hurried back, everyone had already retreated to the sect master's peak. At the beginning, many disciples were unprepared when the people from the 2 prefectures rushed in. So when the Holy Water sect's sect master rushed out, the disciples guarding the mountain gate were all dead. The sect master blocked Luigi and Hong Jinchuan's attacks by herself. Although she barely managed to protect the remaining disciples and led them to the sect master's peak, the sect master was clearly on the verge of death by the time the 3 peak masters rushed over. "Ah Sun, I really have to trouble you to take on this heavy burden this time." The Holy Water sect's sect master trembled as she took out a token and handed it to Murong Sun, who was standing at the head of her bed. "Master." From now on, Murong Sun is my holy water sect's 17th sect master. Master! Yang Shirong and Lu Yun both knelt down, their eyes filled with tears as they looked at the dying sect master. Su Shanshan and the other disciples knelt at the door with their heads bowed. Drops of tears fell from their eyes onto the bamboo floor. Tha'arongayan. Master, disciples are here. The three of them choked out, almost unable to speak. Master's greatest achievement in this life is taking you three as my disciples. The Holy Water Sect's sect master half reclined on the cushion and held her three disciples' hands. She said with a smile, although I call you wicked disciples all day long, I've never seen you before. But I know very well that the three of you are the most filial. Master, you should rest. You will get better. Yang Shirong sobbed. I won't be able to recover. I know my own situation. It was already a miracle that she was able to survive until now after fighting against so many experts from the two prefectures. Right now, only the people from the two prefectures had come, and they could still hold on for a while. If everyone from the 6 prefectures were here. Right now, Master will tell you a secret. The sect master coughed heavily several times and tightly gripped Murong Sun's hands, covering the heated sect master token. Chapter 464. In the ancestral hall behind the sect master's peak, there is a mechanism behind the Buddha statue. Asun, take this token and you can activate an emergency space talisman matrix. It can directly transport you all to a place in Poland Manor. Poland Manor is the most aloof place among the 6 manors. Most of them are women. Cough, cough, cough. You shouldn't be detected if you sneak into a remote place. Of course, this space talisman matrix hasn't been used in several hundred years. Master also doesn't know if there will be any problems during the transport process. Also, this talisman matrix can only transport 200 people. We still have 500 or so disciples left. So Asun, Master will not take responsibility for this difficult decision of who stays and who goes and will entrust it to you. After saying this, the Holy Water Sect's sect master clutched her chest and coughed violently. Suddenly, she straightened up and spat out a mouthful of blood. The 3 disciples' eyes glistened with tears, and their hearts were grief-stricken. They all reached out to gently press her chest. Master! Sect master! The master and disciples tightly clasped their hands together. The Holy Water Sect's sect master heaved a long sigh of relief and slowly collapsed into her pillow. A faint smile hung on her lips, as if she had fallen asleep, and she passed away just like that. Sect master! The disciples outside the door wailed and wailed mournfully. Murong Sun tightly gripped the sect master token in her hand and suddenly raised it with one hand. She turned around and sternly said, Yang Shirong, this sect master decrees you as the 18th sect master of the Holy Water Sect effective immediately. Yang Shirong knelt on the ground and looked up, dazedly gazing at her senior sister. She cried with tears in her eyes, Eldest senior sister? Arong, immediately take 200 disciples to the ancestral hall master spoke of, and leave the Holy Water Sect immediately. No, senior sister. You have to leave with us. Yang Shirong jumped up from the ground and shouted loudly. This matter was caused by my lax disciplining of my disciples. I have no face-to-face everyone in the Holy Water Sect. Everyone can leave. I can't leave. Murong Sun shook her head and sternly stared at Yang Shirong. If you still treat me as your eldest senior sister, leave immediately. Eldest senior sister. I don't want eldest senior sister. Eldest senior sister? Yang Shirong's voice was hoarse from crying. Shanshan Shui Shao, follow your second martial uncle. Master, we won't leave. The two of them refused in unison. You. Murong Sun was both anxious and angry. At this moment, a disciple hurriedly rushed in and shouted, Eldest martial uncle, eldest martial uncle. The people from the 2 manors are rushing up the sect master's peak. Arong, leave immediately. Murong Sun yanked Yang Shirong up from the ground and gave her a heavy shove. Second senior sister. Hurry up and leave. Lu Yun also called out anxiously as she pushed the 3rd peak's disciple, Chan Hanzi, to Yang Shirong's side. At this moment of life and death, many disciples shouted, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving. I vow to live and die with the Holy Water Sect. 3rd sister, you're not leaving either. Yang Shirong's eyes widened in shock. She wanted to pull Lu Yun's arm, but Lu Yun gently shook off her hand. Second senior sister, please take care of yourself. The heavy burden of the holy water sect will be entrusted to you. Lu Yun cupped her fists and smiled lightly at her. Hurry and leave. The anxious Murong Sun kicked Yang Shirong and dragged her and the 200 disciples she casually picked out, pushing them out the back door. Are holy water sect disciples afraid of death? Murong Sun asked coldly. No. You won't lose out if you kill one, but you'll make a profit if you kill two. Kill. Chapter 465. Master, do we have to go? Second Peak's disciple Yugue cried as she repeatedly looked back at the path they came from. The originally quiet and tranquil bamboo forest was now filled with the sounds of battle. The 200 disciples felt like their hearts were being burned by a raging inferno, and their eyes were brimming with tears and hatred. Go! Yang Shirong hardened her heart and flung her head, leading the 200 disciples toward the ancestral hall. It was only at the last moment that they realized there was such a special passage in the sect. Otherwise, they would have brought the child along. Now the child was all alone. Just thinking about it made one's heart ache. Second Antmaster. Chun Hanzi bit her lower lip and sobbed uncontrollably. Don't cry. Yang Shirong held back her tears and roared. Don't disappoint the sect master and the 2 Peak Masters' intentions. We must survive with determination. There is only hope if we survive. As long as the Holy Water Sect has us, the Holy Water Sect will not be destroyed. Yes, the Holy Water Sect will not be destroyed. No matter how difficult the path forward was, they would not shrink back. Even if it was covered in thorns and hidden thorns and filled with deep ravines. Even if they had to crawl all the way until they were covered in poisonous thorns, they would do their best to crawl down. Because each of them carried the lives of 800 Holy Water Sect disciples on their backs. 800 disciples as one heart and one life. The Holy Water Sect would not be destroyed. It would never be. When the sect master token activated the talisman matrix and a burst of moonlight enveloped the 200 disciples, strings of mysterious transparent runes flowed around their bodies like twinkling stars. Everyone cupped their fists toward the bamboo forest and silently said with tears in their eyes, Senior and junior sisters, we will meet again someday. The ancestral hall trembled slightly before regaining its tranquility in an instant. Luigi coughed and panted heavily as he slaughtered the Holy Water Sect disciples along the way. When he rushed up the sect master peak, he was blocked by a water pillar. He couldn't help but smile with narrowed eyes. The lower star domain is truly a mystical place. There's actually someone who can control the water spirit in the tiny holy water sect? Could it be that the sacred water is on you? Murong Sun sneered at him. You can come and try. You'll know whether it's on me or not. The two of them were like 2 shooting stars that streaked across the horizon. Suddenly they made their moves against each other. Whooshing whooshing as the profound energy was activated. Bursts of exploding cyclones spread out around the two of them. At the same time, Hong Jinchuan was leading many disciples from the 2 prefectures to kill Holy Water Sect disciples and interrogate them about the Holy Water's whereabouts. I don't know. A Holy Water Sect disciple collapsed on the ground and glared angrily at Hong Jinchuan. She laughed harshly. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you bastards. Go to hell. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly self-detonated. Lu Yun, who was in the middle of exchanging blows with an elder from the 2 manors, couldn't help but sway. She looked back and bit her lip. The Holy Water Sect disciples' consecutive self-detonations were all blocked by the defensive mystic weapons in the hands of the 2 prefectures. However, at this moment their expressions were rather ugly. This bunch of ants actually dared to resist. Until now, not a single person had revealed the whereabouts of the holy water. This really made them lose face. Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple, Gong Yang, fiercely picked up a fat woman and slapped her. Speak. Where is the holy water? As long as you're willing to say it, I'll give you a chance to live. Sister Fat pounced and heavily knocked her head against Gong Yang's head, immediately leaving a large red mark on his forehead. She spat a mouthful of spittle on Gong Yang's face and laughed loudly. Little bastard. Go to hell. These 2 days I've entered an important turning point in this book. After the turn my chow will be big. Don't be anxious, let me write slowly and write more brilliantly. It's best if you don't influence my train of thought. Today's 10 chapters will end. Tomorrow will still be 10 chapters. And the day after tomorrow it will resume to 6 chapters. Next week the author will be very busy. There are also some readers who are worried that the author will abuse 100 chapters to purposely separate my Qiao and the Crown Prince. That won't happen. The author will never abuse for the sake of abuse, so don't worry. Finally, please repeat after me 3 times. The author is my Qiao's biological mother. Chapter 466. Boom! Although Gongyang activated his defensive artifact, he was still flung out by the force of the self-explosion. He tumbled heavily on the ground, his head bleeding from the impact. Fat sis! The girls of the first peak cried out in grief. The fat sis who took care of everyone's daily needs for 30 years, cooking soup and cooking for them every day, and beaming with smiles every day, no longer existed. Damn it! Fury rose from Gongyang's heart, and he staggered up from the ground. When he saw the disdainful gazes of the other senior and junior brothers of Ani Prefecture, fury rose from his heart. Luigi and Murong Sun's palms collided, and the two of them swiftly separated. Surprise flashed through Luigi's eyes. The highest cultivation in the lower star domain is a level 15 mystic cultivator. But I actually can't see through your cultivation. But it doesn't matter. I'll find a few more people to spar with you. Even if you can surpass level 15 and reach the spiritual realm, you must be suppressed right now. Ha ha, cough cough cough. I heard your sect master died, so the entire sect is grieving and indignant right now. Ha 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 ha. I'll go have a chat with your damn sect master. I'll see if you disciples and grand disciples are willing to let your old sect master's body be riddled with holes and become neither human nor ghost. Ha ha ha. You dare. Fury burst out of Murong Sun's eyes, and a water vortex swiftly shot over. However, before it could wrap around Luigi, that old geezer, she was entangled by 5 or 6 Shuntian Prefecture elders. In Shuntian Prefecture, these level 15 elders were, at most, just outer sect stewards. But in the star field, each and every one of them was respectfully addressed as elders. No matter how high Murong Sun's cultivation was, she was still tightly entangled by several Shuntian Prefecture elders. She could only glare at Luigi with bloodshot eyes as he charged into the sect master's room. Master! Lu Yun crazily attacked the 2 elders from the 2 prefectures from the other side, forcing them to retreat step by step. She flew over and dashed toward the sect master's room. The 2 elders' guts rose as they simultaneously unleashed 2 bursts of vigorous level 15 profound energy, attacking towards Lu Yun's back. Buffed, Lu Yun staggered forward a few steps and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she still dashed toward the sect master's room. Junior sister. At the same time that Murong Sun formed a water defense in her hand, she abruptly flipped her hand and threw down a water judgment. Snow water that blotted out the sky and covered the earth tumbled down the snowy peak, crashing toward the 5 to 6 Shuntian Prefecture elders with a boom. While the many elders of Shuntian Prefecture were alarmed, evil thoughts overtook their minds, and they all worked together to channel a terrifying mystic energy vortex that directly bombarded Murong Sun. Murong Sun swallowed a mouthful of blood, and her eyes were crimson red. With a wave of her hand, her head of fine black hair fluttered along with her robes. In everyone's eyes, the first peak's peak master's crimson robe shone brightly under the night sky. In the blink of an eye, the entire snowy peak shook, and all the snow water flowing underground was drawn out, surging towards the disciples of the 2 prefectures. At the same time, Luigi had already flashed into the sect master's room. He raised his large palm and was about to strangle the sect master's neck. At this time, the sect master's bed suddenly flipped over, and a person jumped out from under the bed, ruthlessly punching through the chest of Luigi, a level 15 great mystic cultivator. Luigi spat out a mouthful of blood and hastily grabbed a large handful of pills to consume. As he swallowed the pills in large mouthfuls, he viciously glared in the direction of the bed and was stunned. Chapter 467. Although the Holy Water Sect's sect master was ghastly pale, she still stood there perfectly fine. How was she already dead? A woman in her 50s stood beside her, supporting the sect master's arm. The two of them didn't say a word and pounced towards him. The profound energy from each of their fists intertwined and swept towards his face with a boom. Luigi was shocked. He had already experienced the sect master's strength. She was an out-and-out level 15 great mystic cultivator. As for the old woman beside the sect master, her strength was also not ordinary. Xiaohong, take the children and leave. The sect master abruptly pounced over and grabbed Luigi's body tightly. Everyone saw the door to the sect master's room being smashed open. Their sect master, who had already breathed her last, actually rushed out with Luigi in her arms and flew toward the snowy peak. Let's go. Before everyone could react, the sect master left behind her last words and rushed toward the snowy peak with Luigi in tow. At the same time there was a huge explosion. Aunt Yi's eyes instantly moistened. Following this explosion, half of the sect master's peak split open, and a soul-stirring avalanche began with a bang. At the same time, Duan Yu, who was rushing back to Daybreak Sect, and Situ Yi, who was at Heavenly Dao Sect, received news of the Holy Water Sect being attacked at the same time. Daybreak Sect's sect master Liang Wanshan made a prompt decision. The three sects are united. We can't just watch the 6 prefectures besiege the Holy Water Sect. Master, I'll go with you, Duan Yu immediately said. Everyone turned back and headed toward the Holy Water Sect. At the adventurer base, they ran into Heavenly Dao Sect's Situ Min and company and hurried toward the snowy peak. On the other side, in Five Moon City, City Lord Wu Mantian and his wife stood by the window deeply worried. They looked up at the pitch-black sky, not knowing what to do. Everyone in Five Moon City knew about the huge commotion caused by the Holy Water Sect tonight. No one knew what happened at the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate, so the common people naturally didn't dare to poke their noses into other people's business. Until the next day, everyone was speechless as they looked at the Holy Water Sect's mountain peaks that had been practically flattened. In particular, the sect master's peak seemed to have been directly shaved off by half of its peak. The entire peak was shorter by more than half, and the soaring flames burned for an entire night. No one dared to go there and see what had happened. The Five Moon City's city lord only dared to send 2 10th level experts over to take a look. However, very quickly, the news they brought back was that no one from the Holy Water Sect was left alive. Everything seemed to be settled. The world-shaking battle 3 days ago seemed to have been buried by the snow that never melted all year round. These past few days, the citizens of Five Moon City had been whispering in private, saying that the Holy Water Sect might have offended an expert from the middle 6 prefectures, which led to the tragic extermination of their sect. Who did you say was exterminated? A fair and clean little hand suddenly grabbed the noisy woman's collar and lifted her up with one hand. The woman was so scared that her legs kicked wildly and she begged for mercy again and again. Spare me, miss, spare me. After rushing for 3 days and 4 nights, they finally arrived at Arbor in Five Moon City. They couldn't accept the news at all. Impossible. She shook her head. Master wouldn't lie to her. Arbor shook its head vigorously, then shook its head again. Suddenly, he left the noisy woman behind and sprinted towards the city gate. Everyone saw that the plain figure was as fast as a wisp of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had passed over 100 people. They couldn't help but stare at him in amazement. Chapter 468. Arbor dashed out of the city and quickly arrived at the foot of Snowy Peak. As soon as she reached Xianghe village, her heart trembled from the deathly stillness. Deathly stillness, it really was deathly stillness. Usually, this small village at the foot of Snowy Peak would be very lively at this time. Children's laughter mixed with women's chatter, and men came down from the mountain after a day of hard work. Smoke rose in spirals from kitchen chimneys, cheerful laughter, but now all of this was gone. Deathly stillness, it really was a deathly stillness. Arbor dashed into the village entrance and stood there in a daze. What appeared before her were only dilapidated fences, dilapidated walls and wreckage. It was incomparably wretched, and there wasn't a single complete corpse. Senior sister. Senior sister. Arbor dashed to a holy water sect disciple whose face was covered in blood and grime. She hugged her head that had rolled to the side of the grass and shook it vigorously. Senior sister. Arbor hugged this head tightly and didn't notice at all that her chest was already drenched in blood. Senior sister, senior sister. This senior sister and the others all had cultivations around level 5 or 6, and they guarded the mountain gate all year round. Arbor's eyes reddened, and she abruptly turned her head. She suddenly fished out a small intact girl's body from under a headless corpse as if she had gone mad. She was a bit warm to the touch. This child was still alive. She was still alive. Xiaomu immediately performed acupuncture and breathed into her, promptly feeding her the best medicinal solution she had on hand. After a long while, the girl coughed out blood and weakly opened her eyes. Her eyes suddenly emitted a faint light. "I know you. You fly in the sky, Sister Immortal." The girl's voice was hoarse and gloomy as she spoke intermittently. "I'm not some immortal. I'm just a useless person. I can't save you. I can't save anyone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Arbor's tears immediately flowed down. Too late, her reply was too late. It was still too late. This girl was already incurable. If she could return half a day earlier, perhaps she could. Or perhaps if the sapling was here, she could ask it for an excellent spirit pill. But it was useless to say anything now. "Sister, my mother said that the dead will turn into monsters." The girl's internal organs were all injured, and she hadn't had enough food and water for so many days. She was already on the verge of death. As she spoke, blood constantly spurted out from her mouth. I don't want to become a monster." Arbor hugged her, tears falling on her face. She nodded heavily and said, "Sister promises you. You will never become a monster. Okay." The little girl pointed and cried out weakly, "Am I mother?" Arbor hugged her tightly and subconsciously reached out to cover her cold little hand. He murmured softly, "Big sister will bury you and your mother together. You won't be separated anymore. Your mother will continue to protect you in her next life. Big sister, don't cry. You're an immortal." The little girl's voice grew weaker and weaker until there was no more sound. Arbor bit her thin lips and hugged the little girl tightly. She lowered her little head and said softly, "I'm not an immortal. I'm not. I can't even save you." Rushing all the way from Xianghe village to the mountain gate, on both sides of the mountain path, she occasionally saw several incomplete corpses of her senior sisters. Xiaomu did not know how she managed to walk up. She really did not know. She felt as if she was floating, as if she was stepping on a ball of cotton or a cloud. She staggered up the mountain while stumbling. Chapter 469. She didn't have many tears left. In the past, Xiaomu truly did not know that a person's body could shed so many tears. So when she ascended the sect master's peak and stared blankly at the tragic scene in front of her, she didn't shed any tears. She just stood there in a daze, staring blankly. The bamboo buildings were razed to the ground, and the sect master's favorite bamboo forest was also burned to the ground. She couldn't tell which of the corpses on the ground were the enemies and which were her sisters. Her foot kicked something. She looked down and saw that she knew this person. It was Second Peak's fool, Chang Yushi. She squatted down and patted Chang Yushi's blood-stained face. She said expressionlessly, "Fool, get up. Didn't you want to be my follower? I'll allow it. Get up." Chang Yushi closed her eyes and didn't say anything. She no longer had her usual vigor. "Get up, get up." Arbor scooped up her body and watched as the lower half of her body fell to the ground with a crash. She walked forward in a daze and saw countless familiar faces. Third Peak's senior martial sister Li Ling. The first time she met her was before the operation in Qinghe town. She walked up to her and introduced herself with a bright smile. "I'm Third Peak's Li Ling, Second Peak's senior martial sister Su Qinghu." Back then, she was carried back to Second Peak by Second Martial Uncle. When she came out of seclusion, she saw Su Qinghu fainting from hunger on Second Peak. She thought they were idiots. Su Qinghu even asked her, "Are you very hungry?" At that time, senior martial sister Su smiled shyly at her. "I'm fine, little junior martial sister." "Fine. Not fine at all. You're all dead now." Second senior martial sister. She saw second senior martial sister Shuizhao's half-severed body fall into the snow pit. She turned around and sprinted forward, pouncing on a body. Compared to the other pitiful senior martial sisters, eldest senior martial sister Su Shanshan's body was very intact. She quietly lay beside the snow pit with her eyes closed. leaning her head against second senior martial sister Shuizhao's half-severed body. Arbor thought she was so sad that she couldn't cry anymore. But her tears kept falling down inexplicably. She couldn't stop it at all. Liar. Arbor forcefully slapped eldest senior sister Su Shanshan's arm and whimpered, "You told me in Qinghe town that you would protect me. You wouldn't leave me alone." Liar, liar. Arbor slapped her twice again. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked back and forth at the corpses on the sect master's peak. She suddenly dragged out her voice and yelled, "Murong Sun! Murong Sun! Murong Sun, where are you? Murong Sun, you big liar! Murong Sun, you lied to me." She dragged her tired feet and circled the entire sect master's peak, but she did not see Murong Sun. Instead, he found third martial aunt Lu Yun's head. She hugged Lu Yun's head and stumbled over to Su Shanshan's side. She placed Lu Yun beside Su Shanshan and cried until her voice was hoarse. She said pitifully, "Third martial uncle, stay here and accompany eldest martial sister. I still have to find my master, but I don't know where my master has gone. Third martial uncle, where do you think my master went?" She then picked up Lu Yun's head and helped her wipe off the dirt on her face. With a confused expression, she asked, "Third martial uncle, where do you think my master went?" "Murong Sun, come out." The little fellow placed Lu Yun's head next to Su Shanshan and suddenly sprinted toward the ancestral hall. Chapter 470. Half of the ancestral hall had been destroyed long ago, leaving behind only a small portion of lonely wreckage. Arbor dazedly flipped through the miniature life lanterns of the sect's disciples. She watched as second senior sister Shuizhao's battered body was flung away at the final juncture of her battle with the enemy. Arbor could not shed any more tears. She propped up her cheek with one hand and flipped through the miniature life lanterns one by one. When she saw the sect master dragging a stooped old man up the snowy peak to self-destruct, she suddenly froze. She recognized this old man. She had met this old man once outside Xixia Valley's second southern courtyard. Later, she also saw this old man on the competition field. Wasn't he a guest elder of the Ghost faction? What exactly were the middle six prefectures rumored in the marketplace? Could it be that this guest elder of the Ghost faction was actually someone from the middle six prefectures? She did not find Murong Sun's life lantern. Perhaps because the ancestral hall collapsed, more than half of the disciples' life lanterns were smashed down by rocks. Arbor lowered her head and searched through the cracks in the rocks for a long time but could not find it. Instead, she dug until her fingers were bleeding. "Master!" Chocho did not dare to speak and weakly called out, "Don't dig anymore. It probably slid down the snowy peak due to the avalanche." "Murong Sun, you big liar!" The little stoic expressionlessly retorted. "You still have a master. Master will definitely accompany you in the future. Master has never lied to you." They were all lies. "Chocho, do you know?" The little stoic muttered to herself hoarsely, "I won't have a master in the future." "Ha ha ha, what are you afraid of without a master? Without a master you still have me, your older brother. Little beauty, as long as you're willing to return with me, I guarantee you'll eat and drink well in the future. You definitely won't have a bad life." An ear-piercing teasing laughter suddenly barged into Arbor's ears. She stood up and took a step forward. The tip of her foot kicked something like a hard iron tablet. She bent down to pick it up and flipped through it before putting it away into her inner world with an icy expression. Afterwards, she looked up at the group of people outside the ancestral hall. She recognized them all. Myriad Factions Faction Master's son, Fei Qing, sickly and lecherously eyeing Holy Water Sect's disciples all day long. Ghost Sect's Elder Ghost Serd, Granny Witch and her group from Coitus Sect. One of them was an old friend of Arbor's. Back when they were fighting for the paradise, Emolian had helped to extract a strand of her soul. She was Yao Ji of the Coitus Sect. At this moment, her life spirit was still in Arbor's inner world, so when Arbor looked at her coldly, Yao Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. "You pervert. You won't change even after 3 sentences." Coitus Sect's Chi Mei covered her mouth and giggled. She swayed her body flirtatiously and smiled sweetly at Arbor. "Junior Marshal sister, you're the only one left. TSK tisk, she's crying. Look on that tear-stained face of hers. TSK, the tears haven't even dried yet. If the Holy Water Sect's 3 peak masters saw this, their hearts would definitely ache. Arbor coldly stared at this woman and coldly said, "What? Ghost Sect, Myriad Faction, Coitus Sect, and Ghost Sect can't wait to hit someone when they're down?" Myriad Faction's Fei Qing pretentiously smiled and said, "What are you saying? Our 3 factions also heard that something happened to the Holy Water Sect, so we specially rushed over to take a look and offer our condolences. Little Junior Marshal's sister, don't be afraid. Come to brother. Brother will protect you." Chapter 471. Protection. Xiao Mu's eyes involuntarily narrowed, and her eyes, which were as cold as ice, slowly swept a glance at Fei Qing. Fei Qing inexplicably shuddered on the spot, but at the same time he secretly became excited. He had always liked pretty girls, especially younger ones. He liked them even more. In the towns near Myriad Faction, there were at least 800 if not 1,000 girls who had been ruined by his hands. Chi Mayor jokingly called him a pervert, and that was not just in name. When he was in Xixia Valley, his heart had long been itching uncontrollably in front of so many pretty girls from the Holy Water Sect. Unfortunately, his father, Fei Pingyi, had severely warned him not to be rash due to the presence of the 3 peak masters. As a result, he didn't dare to make a move during the entire competition. Normally, he would have seen this exquisite and adorable little junior sister, who was like a small ice sculpture long ago. Unfortunately, this little fellow was never alone. She was usually surrounded by a group of people and stars, so he didn't have a chance to make a move. But today was different. Look at the dilapidated surroundings. The Holy Water Sect had been exterminated. What other backing would his little junior sister have in the future? Wouldn't it be easy for him to capture her? As he thought about this, Fei Qing's expression became even more smug. He glanced at Arbor with greed in his eyes and beckoned at her again. "Little junior sister, don't be afraid. Come here. Aren't we old acquaintances?" On the side, Chi Mayor giggled again. Unexpectedly, when she met Arbor's bone-chilling eyes, her heart skipped a beat for some reason. Ghost Surt impatiently roared from the side. "You still have the time to waste with her? Why don't you capture her first?" After speaking, he didn't care about how flustered and exasperated Fei Qing was. He stretched out his hand toward Arbor's neck. He originally thought that he would be able to pick up the little girl like picking up a little chick. Ghost Surt's eyes even emitted an evil glint. Most of the Ghost Faction's disciples who came to participate in the competition were killed by the Holy Water Sect. Now the heavens had eyes and gave them retribution for their sect's extermination. If he didn't act now, when would he? When he ruthlessly attacked, he seemed to have completely forgotten that the Ghost Faction's people had suffered many setbacks at the little girl's hands. When they first met, he, Ghost Surt, was already no match for the little girl. Let alone now. A silhouette flashed in front of Ghost Surt. With a sweep of his wrist, a dagger slid across Ghost Surt's neck, drawing a long line of blood on his neck. Ghost Surt subconsciously touched the line of blood on his throat. As he fell, his eyes were filled with disbelief. His life was taken away as soon as they met? Why? Yet Granny Witch's hair stood on end, and she bellowed, "Idiot, this little brat is no longer that little level 8 mystic cultivator from back then. Who? Granny Witch only felt a pain in her back. She was thrown a few steps forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. This sneak attack caused her to be greatly alarmed. The disciples of Coitus Sect were also dumbfounded. They all turned their heads to look at Yao Ji, who had suddenly attacked Granny Witch. Their faces were filled with shock and astonishment as they shrieked in terror. "What are you doing, Yao Ji? I pledge my life to the young master." Yao Ji shouted at Xiao Mu and clawed the face of a Coitus Faction disciple beside her with a backhand. Immediately, a gurgling stream of venom flowed out of that disciple's face. Chapter 472. Previously, Yao Ji was still a bit hesitant, unsure whether she should make a move or not. One had to know that the 3 factions had gathered about 100 people, and the little girl was alone. If she suddenly betrayed Coitus Sect and stood by the little girl's side to resist the 3 factions' 100 people, then she would undoubtedly die. However, her fate soul was in the little girl's hands. If she didn't help her, then she would definitely lose her life on the spot. With the little girl's ruthless temperament and vicious methods, she definitely wouldn't let an enemy like her off. Thus, Yao Ji made all kinds of calculations and felt that she would definitely die at this moment. However, when she saw the little girl slash ghost surge to death with the dagger, Yao Ji knew that her chance had come. The little girl seemed to be much stronger than she expected. She knew she had to gamble this time. She stood behind Granny Witch and instantly pierced Granny Witch's heart with a cold stab. How could Granny Witch and the Coitus sect disciples have anticipated that Yao Ji would suddenly make a move? Their Coitus sect's formation was thrown into chaos. At the same time, the little girl had already rushed forward. She flung out countless flying talismans trapping Fei Qing's group. Ebony intermediate level binding talisman formation. It could bind at most 10 people at a time. These people's cultivation levels were slightly lower than hers. Once she used this binding talisman formation to bind them, everyone turned pale with fright. They were bound inside the talisman formation circle and couldn't escape no matter how hard they tried. Only now did they remember. During the competition, the little girl had once used this move against Daybreak Sect's Mu Liangda. At that time, they were still secretly mocking Mu Liangda for being useless for not being able to defeat a 12 to 13-year-old little girl. But now, when they had a taste of this binding talisman formation, their faces suddenly turned pale with fright. They couldn't move. They couldn't even release mystic energy after being bound by this binding talisman formation? Fei Qing, this useless guy, was so frightened that his face contorted. He continuously tried to break out of this talisman formation and looked up at Arbor with a pale face. Just as he called out little junior sister, the little fellow furiously raised her ferrule and smacked it down on his head. Who's your little junior sister? Was the 3 words little junior sister something a filthy guy like you could call out? Die for me. Arbor tossed out a handful of shooting star scatters with a flick of his hand. Ding ding ding, they hit the people in the array. Fei Qing and the others were like turtles in a jar, unable to resist at all. After a burst of meteor scattering, Fei Qing was horrified to find that the disciples he had pulled in front of him to resist the meteor scattering were now like live targets, their bodies covered with small nails. You! Fei Qing's face was filled with panic as he shouted. At this critical moment of life and death, he didn't dare to call her junior sister anymore. He also didn't dare to tease her anymore. Instead, he kept saying, "How dare you, little bitch? If you dare to hurt me, my father won't let you off." Fei Qing felt that his threat was useless. The little girl's face was expressionless as she directly struck out a mighty profound energy that fiercely struck Fei Qing's chin, directly smashing his mouth into pieces. Fei Qing's unpleasant roar came to an abrupt stop. Arbor pounced forward and fiercely struck his head with the ferrule, immediately smashing his skull open. Brain matter burst out, and he died on the spot. Since you're here, then stay. The little girl pinched 2 core-crushing thunders between her fingers and fiercely threw them into the crowd. Under the panicked gazes of the crowd, the core-crushing thunders suddenly exploded. Oh Yi and the others chased with all their might, but when they heard the explosion halfway up the mountain, they immediately flew up the snowy peak. Chapter 473. Little miss, you're a bit interesting. A sinister laugh came from Arbor's back. Ani Prefecture's Hong Jinchuan had actually been guarding the Holy Water sect this entire time. Ever since the sect master self-detonated while dragging Luigi was heavily injured and could no longer fight. The entire Shuntian Prefecture's strength was also greatly reduced. The remaining people from Shuntian Prefecture carried Luigi down the snowy peak. However, Hong Jinchuan was unwilling to give up, so he led the 300 people from Ani Prefecture to guard the sect for a few more days. Sure enough, he had been waiting for someone to come today. He had been secretly observing the little girl and learned of her identity. Holy Water sect's first peak master. Murong Sun's personal disciple truly was a girl with outstanding strength. The disciples from the 3 factions could not last more than a few moves in her hands before they scattered like birds and beasts. Unfortunately, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator was nothing in his eyes. Little girl, obediently tell me the holy water's whereabouts. I can spare your life. Hong Jinchuan chuckled as he looked at Arbor. Calculating the time, the people from the other prefectures should be arriving soon. Before that, He had to trick the little girl into speaking up as soon as possible. If it didn't work, he might have to use some unpleasant methods. Holy water, Arbor muttered to himself. As expected, they came for Lady Holy Water? But why did they call it holy water? Yes, it's holy water. We received news that the holy water is inside your holy water sect. Unfortunately, they turned the entire holy water sect upside down but did not find anything. The strangest thing was that such a large sect did not even have a treasury or something like that. It simply made people depressed. Where's Murong Suan? The little girl suddenly asked coldly and did not answer Hong Jinchuan's question. Hong Jinchuan couldn't help but be angry, and his lips twitched with a fake smile. Your master? Don't tell me you still don't know? Look at your sect. Corpses are strewn everywhere and broken limbs are everywhere. Why are they so incomplete? Ha 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 ha. It's because idiots like them are all playing with self-detonation, ha ha ha. Unfortunately, to us level 15 great mystic cultivators, it's like the light of a firefly and can't harm us at all. Xiao Mu suppressed the resentment in her heart and coldly gazed at them. The auras of Hong Jinchuan and the others were indeed very powerful. There were more than 300 people from Ani Prefecture, and she couldn't see through at least 100 of them, which meant that their cultivations were definitely higher than hers. Moreover, how many of them were level 15 great mystic cultivators like Hong Jinchuan? If it was only for her to challenge level 10 or level 23 great mystic cultivators above her level, she might still have a chance. But now, asking her, a mere level 11 mystic cultivator, to challenge multiple level 15 great mystic cultivators was practically sending herself to her death. Of course, she also had her trump cards and might be able to kill a few level 15 great mystic cultivators. What's your name? This old man is Hong Jinchuan of Ani Prefecture. Hong Jinchuan wasn't worried at all about the consequences of exposing his name to the little girl. In his opinion, Murong Suan, his last disciple, was already a dead person. Murong Suan self-detonated? The little girl asked expressionlessly with pursed lips. You killed her? The little girl pressed on. Hong Jinchuan became impatient. Does it matter who killed her? You're just a little girl. Could it be that you want to avenge your sect by yourself? Chapter 474. I advise you to honestly tell me the holy water's whereabouts. Otherwise. Suddenly, a binding talisman matrix landed on the 10 Ani Prefecture disciples. At the same time, Arbor flung out a core-ravaging thunder, which shattered half of the ancestral hall that had collapsed with a boom. Qingyuan was released, and with a shrill cry, it swooped down and unleashed an Arctic frost slash, blowing 3 to 4 Ani Prefecture disciples who were caught off guard into ice sculptures on the spot. Arbor swept her ferrule across, and those ice sculptures shattered into pieces. The severed limbs wrapped in ice tumbled to the side with a plop. Silly girl, you actually dare to be so audacious? Hong Jinchuan shouted angrily. Did she think that she was still fighting a motley crew from the 3 gates? What she swore to fight to the death was Ani Prefecture, one of the 6 prefectures. Although this group of people might not be considered as experts in an E-prefecture, in the lower star field, it was more than enough to deal with a mere little girl, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. When this old man catches you, I'll break your limbs and see if you'll tell me the holy water's whereabouts. Fury flashed through Hong Jinchuan's eyes, and he instantly exploded. His fingers formed a claw as he clawed at Arbor. Clang! This claw actually grabbed a thick defensive barrier, causing the old man's claw to stiffen. What? This damn girl's defensive barrier was actually so sturdy. How could he know that ever since Arbor advanced to level 11 Great Mystic Cultivator, several layers of seals on her eggshell defensive barrier had also been opened? Now, it probably wouldn't be much of a problem to deal with 8 to 10 heavy blows from a level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator. In the blink of an eye, the ferrule in Arbor's hand had already gathered the power of flames, and it struck Hong Jinchuan's arm with a whoosh. Apart from his shock, Hong Jinchuan's eyes were filled with greed. Spirit weapon. Damn girl, the holy water sect truly treats you very well. They're even willing to give you a spirit weapon, little girl. Unfortunately, we'll have to see if a little girl like you can keep your life to hold it. Hong Jinchuan snatched the ferrule from her hand. Tigers roared and birds chirped. Hundreds of beasts came out. Qingyuan was surrounded. Arbor flung out a small golem to block the saber slash coming from Ani Mansion's disciples from the side. My lady! Stay up late and the others flew up to the faction leader's peak and saw a scary scene. Their family's young miss was actually besieged by more than 300 men and beasts. She was struggling to hold on, and her entire body was bathed in blood. Arbor looked back and her pupils shrank. When she ran around the sect master's peak, she found that there were many broken bodies of black-clothed youths on the sect master's peak. They seemed to be the crown prince's subordinates. Why did he come here to die? This was her sect's matter and had nothing to do with others. They shouldn't have come. Stay up late and dozens of others quickly summoned their own Xian beasts and joined the battle. However, even with their participation there was still a huge disparity in numbers. She threw out a bunch of support talismans at Stay Up Late and the others. The Mystic Guiding Talisman Matrix had already been activated, and all the mystic energy within 50 kilometers of the Holy Water sect continuously poured into her body. Greed and hesitation flashed through Hong Jinchuan's eyes. It was a bit of a pity to kill such an exceptionally talented great talisman practitioner. If you're willing to hand over the sacred water and sacrifice a strand of your soul to me, I'll spare your life and spare their lives. Arbor responded by biting the tip of her tongue and spraying a mouthful of blood onto her ferrule. The ferrule emitted a strange light. Chapter 475. It clanged in Arbor's hand and suddenly flew out. Raging flames sprayed directly at Hong Jinchuan's face. Hong Jinchuan raised his saber to block, but the profound weapon in his hand was actually cut in half by the ferrule. The tip of the saber stabbed into the ground with a clang. A trace of fury shot out of Hong Jinchuan's eyes. The moment his body exploded, he circulated all the profound energy in his body and viciously attacked Arbor's head. In the nick of time, a faint moon-white phantom leaped out from the ferrule and abruptly shielded the little fellow. It met the old man's ferocious attack head-on. Bang! Hong Jinchuan spat out a mouthful of blood in shock. His body was already uncontrollably sent flying backward. Arbor's large eyes widened. She subconsciously bit her lip and hurriedly ran forward a few steps. She inexplicably opened her arms, wanting to hug that faintly discernible phantom. Emolian. Emolian must be injured. He's injured. Emolian's phantom turned around and looked at her with an anxious expression. Arbor had just reached out to hug that phantom when he heard a soft sound. His entire body suddenly disappeared from her embrace. The little fellow foolishly made a hugging motion just like that. Wah! Emolian disappeared. The little fellow opened his mouth and did his best to suppress the urge to cry. Choking with sobs, he shouted at Aoyi and the others, who had just fought a bloody battle, "Hurry and leave." She turned around and flew towards Sky Peak. Behind her, an E-Prefecture's people followed closely behind her like a pack of wolves and tigers. At the same time, far away in Guanlan City, Emolian's hand trembled as he flipped through the memorial. A trace of blood actually slid down the corner of his lips. "Your Highness." Xiao 11Z, who had been bending over to offer him tea with both hands, was so frightened that he rolled on the ground. The teacup in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. Some of the officials in the southern study, who were in the middle of a meeting, also cried out when they saw this scene. "Your Highness." Yanqi suddenly appeared beside him and called out anxiously, "Master." The red brush in Emolian's hand made a cracking sound. When she raised her head, her eyes were already filled with a bloody storm. Someone had touched the divine sense he had left in the ferrule. Something had happened to his Jojo. Emolian immediately stood up. "Little Seven, let's go." Weren't they going home? Weren't they going to Shijiao City? Why did they appear in the Holy Water sect? Why didn't Stay Up Late and the others send him a message? Emolian was burning with anxiety. Just now, the wisp of fragmented image that was transmitted to him before the wisp of divine sense dissipated simply terrified him to the core. The little girl was covered in blood and her eyes were like ice. Disobedient, too disobedient. Why didn't you go home obediently? The golden dragon leaped up and flew into the sky. Everyone followed and ran out. They were tongue-tied as they looked at His Highness who was running away. "Your Highness, please don't. We haven't finished discussing the matter of Huqing's fortifications." What His Highness left for them was a speck of golden light on the horizon. The officials looked at each other in bewilderment. At this time, Arbor had already led most of the Ani Prefecture's subordinates to Sky Peak. She turned her head and coldly stared at the level 15 great mystic cultivators in the front row. The Tianji treasure blueprint abruptly flew out of her conscious. All the mystic energy in her main and branch meridians were turned into mystic conscious and frantically poured into the Tianji treasure blueprint. Sky Peak is about to become your burial ground. She wanted these people to die. Her head already felt like it was being pricked by needles. With her current cultivation, using the divine weapon was still too forceful. Fortunately, the divine weapon was willing to cooperate. End of night watch. See you tomorrow. Take the pot lid and run. Chapter 476. That thin piece of paper rapidly expanded before everyone's eyes, flashing with a dazzling golden brilliance. With Arbor's current level 11 Mystic Realm cultivation, he could activate the fourth layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint. Under normal circumstances, activating the third layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint wasn't a big problem. However, Arbor was currently forcefully activating the fourth layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint and carrying out a large-scale indiscriminate group attack. Just the third layer of the Tianji treasure blueprint wasn't enough. Right now, she was facing 5 to 6 level 15 great mystic cultivators as well as 100 or so level 12 and level 3 great mystic cultivators. She wanted to bury them on Sky Peak and accompany the entire holy water sect in death. She needed to kill them in one strike. She didn't have a second chance. An endless stream of mystic conscious desperately squeezed into the Tianji treasure blueprint. Divine weapons were all sentient objects. It already sensed that its little master was risking her life in this desperate attack. As if she was risking her life. It wanted to reject the remaining portion of mystic conscious. It didn't want anything to happen to its little master. However, its master had already sunk into a completely deranged state, so it couldn't stop her at all. The Ani Prefecture's disciples only felt that the light was very glaring, and they couldn't resist closing their eyes. However, in the next instant, the grain-shaped concealed weapons that blotted out the sky instantly pierced through their bodies. 2 level 15 great mystic cultivators bore the brunt of the attack. The grain-shaped concealed weapons pierced through their defensive barriers and directly turned them into sieves. They even dazedly lowered their heads to glance at themselves. Afterwards, they discovered that their bodies were riddled with tiny holes, and they were all spurting out small streams of blood. Their heads instantly ruptured, revealing a bizarre and terrifying scene. Like a torrential downpour of sand, their entire bodies turned into bone dregs with a crash, and minced meat splattered all over the ground. This terrifying instant immediately scared the other level 15 great mystic cultivators into retreating several steps. They activated all the mystic energy in their bodies to reinforce their defensive barriers. The remaining 3 level 15 great mystic cultivators were already completely stupefied, and they stiffly turned their heads around. Only now did they see clearly that under the indiscriminate attacks of the Tianji treasure blueprint, the 200 or so people from the Ani Prefecture had all been reduced to a pile of bone marrow and flesh. They mixed into the snow and dyed the entire ground reddish-brown. More than 200 people. More than 200 people. They were all level 10 mystic cultivators and above, but they were killed just like that. Among them, 2 careless level 15 great mystic cultivators were also killed in this group attack. This could no longer be called a battle. It was a one-sided slaughter. Puffed Arbor's mystic sense was severely damaged. After the attack, he fell limply onto the snowy ground. Her eyes stared fixedly at the pitch-black sky above her. It turned out that unknowingly, the night fog had already enveloped them. In the past, she had never felt as dark as today. Above the horizon, not even a tiny star could be seen. It was too dark, too dark. The 3 level 15 great mystic cultivators stared intently at the Tianji treasure blueprint that had shrunk to the size of a piece of paper hovering in the air. Their eyes shone with a wolf-like ferocity. Cough, cough, cough. Tianji treasure blueprint. Hong Jinchuan clutched the wound on his chest and ascended Sky Peak step by step. His vicious gaze landed on Arbor. Damn lass, you're so young, but each treasure on you surpasses the last. It's a pity that beautiful women are short-lived. These things cough, cough, cough will all take your life. Hong Jinchuan sneered. Chapter 477. Previously, he had been sent flying by the counterattack of Emolien's projection, and even his heart meridians had been damaged. However, he was extremely glad at this moment. If it weren't for the fact that he was a step too slow, he would have most likely met the same fate as those two slightly weaker level 15 great mystic cultivators and lost his life to the Tianji treasure blueprint's indiscriminate group attack. But now, Hong Jinchuan smiled maliciously and glanced disdainfully at Arbor, who had collapsed on the ground and couldn't move at all. Damn girl, I'll give you one last chance. Hong Jinchuan forced out each word from between his teeth. Tell me the whereabouts of the holy water, and I'll spare your lowly life. Hong Jinchuan, you take the holy water. But the Tianji treasure blueprint is mine. Suddenly, one of the three great mystic cultivators pounced toward the Tianji treasure blueprint with quick steps and grabbed at the paper. Bullshit. Hong Jinchuan forcefully swung his palm. I'm the chief manager in charge of all matters in the lower star domain. How can you fight with me? That middle-aged man who was fighting over the Tianji treasure blueprint resentfully retracted his hand and glared at Hong Jinchuan with an angry expression. Everyone is equal in front of treasures. How about this? Let's see who among us can contract it first, and it'll belong to that person. Everyone else is not allowed to say anything. Arbor lay in the ice-cold snow. Her plain dress had already been completely dyed the color of blood. On it was the blood of her fellow sect members, her own blood, but even more of it was the blood of her enemies. She only felt that her entire body was exhausted. She narrowed her eyes slightly and glared at that patch of black on the horizon, as if there was no one else around. She actually didn't hear a single word that these people were arguing about beside her. Damn girl, don't play dead. Hong Jinchuan flew into a rage out of humiliation and punched out with mystic energy. Just as it was about to land on Arbor's body, something pounced over from the side and pressed down on her body. This punch blasted it into 7 or 8 pieces. Arbor dazedly hugged that round and slippery head. Her small hands groped about on the snow beside her, wanting to pick up the scattered pieces of her arms and legs. Her debeo had completely cracked. That silly and noisy fool who would crawl over to her every few days and tell her, "Little mistress, you're so beautiful today," no longer existed. That weak chicken had been besieged until now. He wondered if it had died. There was no sound from Stay Up Late and the others. They were probably dead too. Yes, everyone is dead. The talismans on his body had also been used up, and there wasn't much profound energy left. His profound sense was also on the verge of overdrawing. He had nothing left. She seemed to be the only one left on the snowy peak. It was so quiet that it made one's chest feel stuffy, and the rims of one's eyes were sore. Not a single tear could be shed. Perhaps very soon she would also die. However, was she willing to die like this? She couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. Her entire conscience felt as if it had been torn apart. She could only feel this terrible pain. It was so painful that she wanted to roll back and forth on the ground in order to get rid of this mental pain. She hated these repulsive and greedy villains. She hated herself even more, hated her own incompetence. Chirp! The little white squirrel kept rubbing against her neck. Its pair of black beady eyes were filled with pitiful tear stains. Pain. Her conscience felt as if someone was using a large machete to continuously slash at it. It was so painful that her entire body was trembling. Suddenly, Chapter 478. The hatred that filled her chest had practically transformed into substantial evil thoughts that were about to flow out. The throbbing pain in her head made her curl up her small body on the snowy ground, and her gaze suddenly landed on her left hand. At some point in time, a small section of a sharp sword tip had emerged from her left hand. Fushi. Sword? Inexplicably, she opened her mouth and murmured. She reluctantly reached out her right hand and stroked this small section of the sword tip. This sword? It had been hidden in her body all this time? And she, from beginning to end, had actually not sensed it at all despite growing up to this age? She could call out its name in one breath and even feel an eerie sense of familiarity wash over her. You must be my old friend, right? It's just that I don't even remember you now. Arbor squeezed out what little was left of her conscience and desperately mobilized her nearly exhausted mystic conscience, wanting to pull this sword out of her body. She could feel a majestic and terrifying power contained within the sword. She hoped to use her own hands to hold this Fushi greatsword. Right now, she especially wanted to kill someone. Hong Jinchuan and the others weren't fools. They had already smelled a hint of danger, and they narrowed their eyes at Arbor, who was curled up on the ground. What is she doing? This damn girl, don't tell me she still has a trump card that she hasn't revealed? The middle-aged mystic cultivator said sinisterly. Hong Jinchuan immediately frowned and said angrily, the damn girl probably won't reveal the whereabouts of the sacred water. Let's chop her up and look for it again. Quickly look. A sword appeared in the little girl's hand? Hong Jinchuan was startled by that mystic cultivator's shout. His gaze landed on Arbor, and he only felt a trace of coldness creep into his heart. He absolutely couldn't allow this damn girl to continue living. At such a young age, she had so many trump cards and such strong combat strength. Who knew if they would still be her match after a year or two? This kind of prodigy also had an irreconcilable feud with their Ani prefecture. The two sides were already in a state of irreconcilable enmity. He absolutely couldn't allow a hidden and powerful enemy to continue existing. After this battle, Ani Prefecture's forces on Seikong planet were practically wiped out. Their vitality was truly greatly damaged. After expending so much manpower, if they couldn't bring back some treasures, it would be hard to explain to the manor head. It was all this damned girl's fault. She had taken out the Tianji treasure map and killed so many people from an prefecture. However, it didn't matter. He had already secretly planned to take the Tianji treasure blueprint as his contribution and offer it to the manor lord to curry favor. As for the holy water, that was what he wanted. This time, no matter what, he had to find the holy water. The sword is coming out. The middle-aged mystic cultivator roared. We can't let her continue. With that, the middle-aged mystic cultivator promptly sent out a mystic energy that charged towards Arbor. Chirp! The little white squirrel's fur stood on end as it abruptly jumped out from Arbor's neck and dashed towards the incoming mystic energy. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Its small body was sent flying by the profound energy and landed heavily on the snowy ground. You overestimate yourself. The middle-aged mystic cultivator harumphed angrily. Viciousness grew in his heart, and he flew to Arbor's side. Without a second word, he raised his leg and stomped on her small head. How dare you? A stern rebuke laced with earth-shattering fury abruptly struck the depths of everyone's souls like a muffled hammer. Chapter 479. The middle-aged mystic cultivator spat out a mouthful of blood. While he was greatly alarmed, his complexion also turned ghastly pale. There was actually a projection in front of him. The figure's face was indistinct, but he knew it was a young woman's voice. It could be seen how powerful that soul projection was to be able to transmit her power through her voice and injure their conscience. Even in the middle 6 prefectures, they had never seen such a terrifying person. Who was it? Did the Holy Water Sect have such a powerful backing? Who dares to harm my disciple? Soul explode. The instant that powerful projection pounced down, a powerful force that made one's heart tremble suppressed his entire body. The middle-aged mystic cultivator watched in horror as his body involuntarily spread open. It was actually boom. The next second, the middle-aged mystic cultivator was forced to self-detonate against his will. Ah! The other 2 great mystic cultivators, who were scared out of their wits, immediately broke into a run when they saw that something was amiss. Can you escape? Both of you. The emotionless voice rang out again. Suddenly, 4 invisible barriers erected around the 2 level 15 great mystic cultivators, and a black fog mercilessly burned and evaporated around them. There was clearly only a wisp of concealed black fog and not a trace of smoke, but the 2 people's wretched howls could be heard throughout the 5 peaks. It was extremely mournful. Their figures shrunk along with the black fog around them. It was as if the water, blood, bones, and flesh in their bodies were evaporating inch by inch, losing their final supporting barrier inch by inch, until they softened into a puddle of black water and completely disappeared into the barrier. Hong Jinchuan's body trembled from head to toe. His legs were numb and weak from fright due to the scene before him. Your Excellency, please spare my life. Your Excellency, please spare my life. Hong Jinchuan involuntarily knelt down at this time with a face full of piety and extreme submission. There was not a trace of humiliation in his heart. Facing such a powerful expert with such a powerful aura, Hong Jinchuan could not muster any thoughts of resistance. Right now, his mind was filled with regret and fear. If he had known that the Holy Water sect had such a terrifying backer, how would he have dared to come and cause trouble? As the mysterious man flicked his sleeve, Hong Jinchuan suffered a heavy slap on his cheek. Immediately after, a dozen slaps fell like a storm onto Hong Jinchuan's old face. Soon, his face was swollen and his teeth were shaking as he spat out blood. How dare ants surround and attack a raging tiger? The furious shadow grabbed Hong Jinchuan and tore his body in half effortlessly. Then he threw Hong Jinchuan to the ground like a piece of paper. Xiao Mu was already lying on the snowy ground, and she was merely staring blankly at that violent apparition in a daze. So powerful, so powerful. In her eyes, level 15 mystic cultivators were merely existences akin to ants. With a flip of his hand, he could destroy them in the span of a breath. Master. The shadow in front of her should be her former master that little tree mentioned. No wonder she felt that it was so familiar. Arbor felt her eyes sting, but she couldn't shed a single tear. She clearly wanted to cry so badly. Little treasure, little treasure. The illusory figure anxiously called out, "Are you all right? Don't make Master worry. Your soul is unstable, so don't recklessly use the Fushi Greatsword. Take it back and don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Remember, remember. Master." Chapter 480. Little treasure, Master's good child. You've already grown so big and beautiful. Master only wishes for you to be well. Right now, your mind and body can't control the Fushi Greatsword, so remember, don't summon it. Good child, Master and your Aunt Master both miss you very much. After that apparition abruptly dissipated, the lingering voice still lingered in her ears. The little stoic blankly laid there without moving. Her nose was sour, and a single sentence reverberated in her mind: Master and Aunt Master. Don't abandon little treasure. Don't abandon little treasure. Little treasure will be obedient. Master. The sapling's voice abruptly rang out, containing a trace of anxiety and fear. What happened? Why did you make yourself so miserable and desolate when I only went into closed-door cultivation for a little over a month? Chochio, sect master, is dead. Murong Sun is also dead. Eldest senior sister, second senior sister, and the others are all dead. Even Big Treasure is dead. I don't have anything left. The little stoic pitifully said as she hugged Big Treasure's round head. How could you not have anything? No matter what the future holds, at least you still have me, Chochio. No matter where Master goes, Chochio will accompany Master. Chochio loudly exclaimed with heartache. Master, don't be afraid and don't worry. Return to Paradise Planet first. Chochio, bring your senior sisters back too. Okay? Okay. Arbor's voice was hoarse as she nodded lightly. Even if it was just a few broken limbs, she still wanted to properly bury them. She would bury them on Paradise Planet's peach orchard slope. That place faced a peach forest and was surrounded by a large emerald lake. Her senior sisters would definitely like that place very much, right? Master, your conscience is about to dry up. You have to rest well and recover well. After the sapling carried Arbor back to Paradise Planet, he squatted next to her. The two beady eyes on the tree trunk were filled with worry as they looked at her. I want to lie down for a while. I don't want to think about anything or say anything. Master, where's the holy water? Arbor suddenly thought of something, and her mind jolted. After the divine water fused with you, it will also receive a portion of my power. It should have absorbed most of it by now. I'll go and drag it over. The little tree thought for a moment and secretly sent a message to Lady Holy Water. I see that Master is in a bad mood now. You have to be careful. Ever since Arbor had fused with the essence of the holy water, the two of them had formed an indirect connection. Goody! The water ball obediently shrank itself into a small ice bead and bounced onto its master's hand. Since the life essence had completely merged with its master, Lady Holy Water could also obtain some benefits from the sapling. She then went into seclusion. Now that it had taken advantage of the small tree's power, it had also advanced to the middle stage of the infant stage. Master, you only need to summon Diandian with your mind right now, and Diandian can come out and attack with liquid and solid water at any time. The little ice bead abruptly transformed into a ball of water and quietly floated in the center of Qiao Mu's palm. Arbor, however, remained expressionless. Suddenly, he flipped his hand and tossed it aside. Leave. From now on, I am not your master. You can leave my mystic domain and go wherever you want. The water ball turned into an onion head water doll with a bang. It suddenly took a step and pounced towards Arbor. It cried out pitifully, "Why, master? What did Diandian do wrong? Master, don't be angry." Chapter 481. Qiao Mu also knew that there was no reason for her to vent her anger. What did this have to do with Lady Holy Water? It had always obediently stayed in the Holy Water sect and didn't go out to cause trouble. It also never revealed its true form in front of others. In the end, human nature was still scary. But at least right now, she couldn't see this drop of water at all. She really didn't want to see it. The sapling waved its 2 branches and dragged Lady Holy Water over. Without any explanation, it slapped Lady Holy Water's head. "What are you yelling for? Can't you see that master is in a bad mood?" After saying that, it kicked the water baby's butt and gave it a look. Lady Holy Water sobbed and ran pitifully a few steps away. Sparkling water droplets gurgled out and converged into a trickle that flowed into the stream and into the Emerald Lake. "Master, woo-woo." The water baby moved its short legs and pitifully turned its small head to look in the direction Arbor was lying on. "Master, master." The sapling jumped in fright. It turned out that Arbor had suddenly closed its eyes and didn't say anything. It was as if it had completely fainted, and it anxiously paced around on the spot for a while. The water child rolled all the way back with gurgling sounds and melted into a ball of blue water, rubbing itself against Qiao Mu's body. "Qiao, did master faint from anger because I was useless?" The sapling gloomily glanced at it. It originally wanted to beat it up to vent the stuffiness in its chest, but after thinking it over, beating it up was completely unreasonable, so it dropped the matter. The sapling picked up Arbor with its branches and casually used them to weave a more comfortable hammock for her before placing her inside. The pair of black bean-like eyes on the branch stared fixedly at its master for a while before letting out a long sigh. "Daddy, don't blame master." "I don't blame her. She's just too sad. Let her rest for a while. I know she can recover. She definitely will." The sapling patted the water blob. The water blob emitted a faint blue light and bounced on the ground with gurgling sounds. "Master, what's wrong?" "She's fainted from overexertion of her conscience," the sapling softly exclaimed, then patted the branch and said, "But this might be a good thing. Let's go. Let's not disturb master's rest. Go help me clean up the remaining fellows on the snow-capped peak." Little Tree's body emitted a vicious aura. "Kill them." A strange scene appeared above the Holy Water Sect's 5 peaks. Branches suddenly drilled out of the snow without warning. Accompanied by a wisp of agile water flow, the branches were growing at a terrifying speed. Qing Yuan had lost count of how many mystical beasts she'd fought. Now she was lying at Stay Up Late's feet, on the verge of death, waiting for the remnants of an E-prefecture to wipe her out. A sharp branch suddenly pierced through the chests of several enemies. The other 2 or 3 Ani prefecture disciples were also pierced in and out of their bodies by a strange stream of water under their watchful gazes. In an instant, blood flowed out of their 7 orifices and they fell to the ground with a loud bang. The branch dragged over the unconscious white squirrel, Chirpy, and tossed it into Paradise Planet before sliding towards Qing Yuan again. This was because most of the An-E Prefecture's forces had been lured to Sky Peak by Arbor. The remaining small group only had 40 to 50 people. Chapter 482. However, it was truly an extremely tragic battle for Aoye's group of several dozen against more than 50 great mystic cultivators level 12 and above and 100 mystic beasts. Out of the dozens of people in the Night Pavilion's 3 teams, only 3 remained, including him. Stay Up Late did not know how he managed to descend the snowy peak. When he was shaken, he opened his eyes and saw a few familiar faces. He recognized them. They were from the 3 sects. "Little brother, how are you? Why are you here?" Daybreak Sect Master Liang Wanshan asked him anxiously, "Do you know what happened on the snowy peak?" The series of questions threw Ao Ye's mind into a daze. "Who are you?" Duan Yu abruptly pulled him up, a hint of viciousness in his peach blossom eyes. "You." Clang. A waste token fell to the ground and everyone picked it up. Duan Yu glanced at it before releasing Ao Ye's collar. "You're one of the Crown Prince's men?" Cough cough cough. Ao Ye laid on the ground, so exhausted that he didn't want to move at all. He lifted his eyelids and looked up at the snowy peak. With one glance, he knew why Daybreak Sect Master and the rest were so astonished. The 5 peaks had been completely wrapped up by vines and thorns. The originally snow-white peaks had disappeared, and what stood tall were intersecting branches and dense leaves. It was as if the entire snowy peak had turned into a forest of ancient vines overnight. How can this be? Ao Ye struggled to get up, but Duan Yu ignored him and flew up the snowy peak. Situ-yi hastily followed behind him. Many people from the 2 sects also followed suit. Unfortunately, when they reached halfway up the mountain, their path was completely blocked by vines as thick as a wrist. They chopped at these branches trying to clear a path. Everyone was puzzled, but they didn't slow down. On the other side, Mo Lian, who was rushing to the Holy Water sect as fast as she could, was panicking. His remnant divine conscious had been able to sense the little fellow's existence the entire time. But just now he couldn't sense anything. It was as if the little fellow had suddenly disappeared from the world. Her aura had completely vanished from the world. 7th Yen knew that his master was anxious, so he swung his dragon tail and dashed towards the Holy Water sect at a speed comparable to light. Everyone from the 2 sects had already released their Xian beasts to help them cut down the ancient vines and old trees that were blocking their way. They wanted to open up a path to the sect master's peak as soon as possible. Suddenly he heard a dragon's roar. When he looked up, he saw the crown prince standing on the back of the golden dragon, facing the wind. He was circling around the area full of ancient vines, as if he couldn't find a place to land. Duan Yu forcefully waved his hand at him and transmitted a syllable. "Fire!" A burning red flame shot out from the crown prince's hand and landed on the vines in front of Duan Yu and the others, burning their way through. The speed at which the group opened up the passage increased. Under the burning flames and the ferocious push of the profound beasts, they finally forcibly opened up a path through the encirclement of ancient vines. It was just that when everyone rushed to the sect master's peak, they could not help being stunned. The peak was surrounded by branches, but it was completely empty. They didn't even see a corpse. More than half of the snowy peak had already been flattened, and only a few remaining buildings could be seen. When they looked over, they saw the desolate sight of broken branches strewn across the ground. Chapter 483. Jojo. Mo Lian pressed down on the golden dragon, and the human and beast both landed on the snowy peak. Everyone chopped at the surrounding vines to create a place for them to stand. Mo Lian clenched his fists and stood there for a long time. He released his consciousness, but he couldn't sense his darling's presence. She really disappeared. How could this be? Mo Lian was completely flustered. He thought he sensed wrongly. However, reality proved that even though his consciousness had spread out so far and searched from top to bottom, front to back, he still couldn't sense her existence. "Master, she's not here." The young 7th Yen solemnly shook his head at him. 7th Yan's consciousness could cover a radius of at least 3 kilometers. So to say, his Qiao Qiao really had disappeared from the Holy Water sect. Mo Lian refused to give up and looked at Duan Yu and the rest. "No, how could she not be here?" Duan Yu anxiously said and abruptly turned to look at Ao Ye. "Where's Jojo?" Ao Ye was even more at a loss. "I only saw Miss heading towards that snowy peak in the middle. When I woke up later, I was already at the foot of the snowy peak." Cough cough. "I encountered people from your 2 sections." Everyone's gazes simultaneously turned to Sky Peak, which was the most central of the 5 peaks. Mo Lian flew over without another word, burning all the branches and vines that blocked her way along the way. Everyone had decent cultivations, so they followed closely behind her and headed towards Sky Peak. "Jojo." Mo Lian pulled out her sword and slashed apart several intersecting vines in front of her. After rushing up Sky Peak, She stopped in her tracks. Traces of a fierce battle could be seen on Sky Peak. Many reddish-brown pieces of flesh were left on the snowy ground, mixing with the snow. Jojo! Jojo! Their shouts didn't receive any response. Duan Yu sprinted forward and threw himself beside a shallow human-shaped pit. Come over quickly. His hand groped wildly in the snow. He felt something and dug it out of the snow. Emolienne snatched the small piece of metal from his hand and held it tightly in her hand. Her eyes were almost about to burst into flames. It was a fragment from the little golem. Her Jojo must have been here for a while. But where was she now? She was gone. She had completely disappeared. Chow chow. Emolienne bolted for an even higher snowy peak. His heart was extremely flustered, as if it was being tightly gripped by 5 or 6 terrifying hands. It was so painful that he almost couldn't breathe. Why did this happen? Why? She was fine when they parted. Nothing had happened. His baby even smiled at him adorably. But now, when he thought of his Chow Chow, who was now alone somewhere, he panicked. His heart ached so much that it felt like it was being torn apart. He should have accompanied her. He should have accompanied her all the way. Emolienne was filled with regret. More people are coming. Situi looked coldly at the winding 100-person team at the foot of the snowy peak. It's people from Luotian Prefecture. Daybreak Sect Master Liang Wanshan recognized them at a glance. Hehe, they want to take advantage of the situation? Then stay here forever. Duan Yu's eyes flashed with anger as he sneered. He suddenly reached out to summon his contracted beast. This was the first time everyone saw him summon a mystic beast. Its snow-white body was as large as a small mountain. 7. Seven-tailed heavenly fox? Daybreak Sect Master stuttered. He knew that this disciple of his was quite talented. Chapter 484. However, the legendary seven-tailed heavenly fox was actually a contract beast that Duan Yu had never summoned before. Chestnut, these are all your rations. Duan Yu pointed at the people from Luotian Prefecture on the mountain path. Thank you, master. I can have a full meal now. Brutality flitted through the seven-tailed heavenly fox's eyes, and it abruptly moved its huge body, pouncing straight at the crowd on the mountain path. The bunch of idiots from Luotian Prefecture were currently dreaming of reaping the benefits of others' quarrels. They knew that the people from Shuntian Prefecture and Ani Prefecture had already arrived first. They purposely came later so that they could take advantage of the chaos when the others were almost done fighting. It couldn't be helped. Compared to Shuntian Prefecture and Ani Prefecture, their Luotian Prefecture was slightly inferior. Wealth came from danger. In order to obtain the sacred water, Luotian Prefecture's manager racked his brains and went all out. However, it was a pity that they encountered Duan Yu and Emolienne. Two men in a fit of rage didn't have any rationality. At the same time that the seven-tailed heavenly fox suppressed them, the golden dragon also arrived in front of Luotian Prefecture's disciples with a roar. The seven-tailed heavenly fox spat out a mouthful of purplish-red lightning, which was followed by an earth-shattering blaze. Don't mention that thrilling feeling. The seven-tailed heavenly fox and the golden dragon practically killed a large portion of Luotian Prefecture's disciples in the blink of an eye. Immediately after, Duan Yu pounced on them and threw out a bunch of concealed weapons. Luotian Prefecture's manager was almost about to doubt his life. Could it be that these youths from the lower star domain were born as monsters? They could comprehend the 5 spirits and contract such powerful beasts in a place like the lower star domain? They were much stronger than those so-called geniuses from the middle 6 prefectures. Why? Was it appropriate for them to violate the laws of the star domain? Emolienne currently had nowhere to vent her rage. She harshly clasped the manager's neck and questioned him harshly. Tell me, why did you come to the Holy Water Sect? Where did you get the information? The steward of Luo province was on the verge of tears. He had brought a group of people here to be tortured. Sob sob sob. The steward of Luotian Manor, who felt that he had been wronged, hurriedly said honestly, our Luotian Manor has planted spies in Shuntian Manor. A few days ago, we received news that there were abnormal movements in Shuntian Prefecture. After secretly inquiring about it, we learned that sacred water had appeared in the Holy Water Sect. Young master, please spare me. We're just here to pick up a bargain. We don't have any bad intentions. Shuntian Prefecture. I want all of you to beg for death. Emolien's eyes were filled with intense killing intent. With a gentle swipe of her slender sword, she beheaded the steward of Luotian province. Over the past few days, the citizens of Five Moon City had been living in a state of constant fear. At the Holy Water Sect's snowy peak, a terrifying commotion would occur every few days, and the thunderous rumble of a blizzard could be heard time and time again. How would the commoners dare to investigate? However, the Five Moon City's city lord, Wu Mantian, had sent people to investigate many times, but the outcome was the same every time. There was no one left in the Holy Water Sect. Such a large sect had been overturned in an instant. Wu Mantian and his wife sighed inwardly, and sent people to clean up the remaining corpses of the Xianghe village's villagers, and hastily bury them. Day after day, month after month, Five Moon City appeared to have calmed down, and the Holy Water Sect's incident had also been forgotten by the commoners. But in reality, in places where the commoners couldn't see, there had already been waves of bloody retribution. Chapter 485. In a secret manor in the eastern part of Sikong Planet. No one knew that this place was actually one of the larger strongholds of Shuntian Prefecture on Sikong Planet. Until Northern Prince Emo led people and completely cleared out this place with lightning speed. The originally beautiful courtyard was now a mess with blood all over the ground. The 100 people from the hidden pavilion were all experts above level 12, and they carried out a one-sided massacre. At daybreak, there were faint clusters of flames moving in the manor. There were more than 1,000 people in the manor, but only one was left alive. The manor lord was forced to kneel in front of a black-clothed youth with bloodshot eyes. His hands dug into the ground as he angrily shouted, "Why? Hand it over." The back figure faced him indifferently and threw down these 3 words. "Hand over what?" The manor lord glared at the person's back with bloodshot eyes. If looks could kill, that devil would be riddled with holes by now. There were more than 1,000 people in the manor. His family had more than 20 people, and they all died in the hands of these people. Ah! What did they want him to hand over? My people. The youth abruptly turned his head and stared at him emotionlessly with a pair of icy phoenix eyes. Hand it over. The manor lord wanted to howl at the sky and cry out his grievances. He really didn't know who this youth wanted him to hand over. In these 2 years, the 2 large countries in the north joined forces with Southern Bailey to clear out Shuntian Prefecture's forces everywhere. He already knew earlier that this fire would burn him sooner or later. He already led his subordinates to such a remote manor in the eastern part of the manor, so why couldn't he let them off? Thinking of his misery, tears involuntarily flowed down his old face. Now that he thought about it, his friend was right. No matter how strong the middle 6 prefectures were, it wasn't his territory after all. It was better to be careful in everything. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. This lower star domain might not be as weak as you and I thought. Perhaps there were still a few hidden forces that were very strong. Cry. He actually had the face to cry? Compare who was more miserable. Who was more miserable? No one knew better than him how he had spent the past 2 years. Emolian ruthlessly kicked the manor lord's chest. Hand it over. Wow! The old man spat out a mouthful of blood on the ground. He clutched his chest and laughed miserably. Devil, you devil! What do you want from me? I didn't take anything. Devil? Emolian raised his phoenix eyes and gazed at him coldly. So what if he became a demon? How dare you? The captain of the hidden pavilion stepped on the old man's back. How dare you speak so rudely to His Highness? You're not going to tell me? Emolian's phoenix eyes narrowed as she laughed coldly. This solitude wants to refine the flesh and blood of your entire family, old and young, and turn them into mechanical puppets. This solitude will make you people of Shuntian Palace obey orders for eternity, and never be able to reincarnate. The old man's pupils shrank and he screamed, No, no, no. What do you want me to say? Your Honor. I didn't take anything. I didn't take anything. My people. Emolian flicked her sleeve, and a heavy slap landed on the manor lord's face. You bunch of snakes and worms from Shuntian Hall, you took away my man and haven't returned it to me for 2 years. Hand it over. The old man fell to the ground. He didn't catch his breath and lay there motionless. A member of the hidden pavilion went forward to check his pulse. He turned to the crown prince and said, "He's dead, your highness." Emolien's cold gaze landed on him. She said indifferently, "Continue searching. This solitude wants everyone in Shuntian Palace to be exterminated." Chapter 486. The evening wind blew gently through the forest. Peach blossom petals fluttered like snowflakes and landed on the red clothes with rustling sounds. The lake was sparkling and schools of fish swam. The water and wind were cool and meandered. At this moment, a broken peach blossom petal landed on her lips. Her lips were rosy and moist, vermilion without being touched. Her crescent brows moved slightly, and she lifted her eyelids. A pair of pitch-black eyes opened slightly. "Master, you've been lying here for 2 days and 2 nights. A little tree ant ran over and shook its tree arms. "If you lie down any longer, little mushrooms will grow all over your body." "Chocho, how long have I been sleeping?" 2 days and 2 nights. The little tree ant bounced a few times beside her. "Master, get up." Arbor reached out and picked up the broken petal stuck to her lips. Her ice-like eyes moved indifferently and she turned to look at the little tree. "What am I going to do today?" "Master, there's actually nothing to do. You've planted all the seeds in the ground these days. Many medicinal plants have already started to grow healthily, and those vegetable fields can harvest several rounds of vegetables. Go and collect them." Arbor reached out and grabbed a thin book to cover her face. "I'll sleep for a while." The little tree. Guru. A small ice bead rolled to the little trent's feet. A small claw extended from the ice bead and scratched the little trent's trunk. The little tree ant stretched out its branches and whipped it. Guru. The ice bead thought that it had hidden itself well, and had been hiding under the little trent's branches and leaves. Occasionally, when it approached its master, it would only sneak a glance at her before shrinking back. "Don't be so sneaky." The little tree ant scolded in anger and amusement. "Do you think master is stupid? She already knew that you didn't scram." "Guru, speak human language." The little tree ant was so angry that it wrapped its tree arms and punched the ice bead. "Master has been lying for 2 days and 2 nights. Aren't you hungry?" The little water blob asked pitifully. The little tree ant sighed. When it turned its head, it was suddenly stunned. Under the peach blossom trees, a red dress had long disappeared. It had been a long time since she came to this hillside. Facing the peach blossom forest, it was surrounded by a circle of green water. The peach blossom slope was full of flowers and green grass, and the fragrance was intoxicating. Xiaomu stood in front of a nameless grave, not moving an inch for a long time. Her slender and straight figure stood in front of the grave. Under her fierce red clothes, her slender fingers poked out of her sleeves. With a move, 2 jars of wine appeared in her hands. After slapping open the wine seal, Xiaomu took a sip before turning the wine jar upside down, mixing the wine into the soil. "Fellow disciples, Jojo will drink first as a sign of respect." "Master." The little tree ant skipped all the way over. "Master, you? Have I not been here for a long time?" The sapling grunted sullenly. "Master, ever since you buried the holy water sect disciples here, you haven't set foot here." "Chocho, how long have I been here?" "It's been a long time, master. It's already been a little over 2 years." The sapling stretched out a branch and gently tugged at her sleeve. Its heart ached when it saw its master like this. Arbor walked forward a few steps and arrived in front of a coffin sealed in ice. Separated by a thick layer of ice, she indifferently gazed at Su Shanshan, who was lying inside. With a move of her finger, a peach blossom was placed on top of her ice coffin. Chapter 487. "Master, you should go out now," the sapling said weakly. Looking at its little master who was gently caressing the ice coffin, its tree-like face almost scrunched together. "The sun rises and sets day after day. Master, you've already stayed here for more than 2 years. Other than the first 6 months when you advanced your conscious in your sleep, after that, I always felt that you were no different from sleeping when you were awake. It was lifeless. No, it seemed to be world-weary. Chocho, are you disappointed in me? Arbor murmured softly. The sapling shook its sharp tree head like a rattledrum. No. Chocho will always love Master so much. Don't hang out with that blob of water in the future. Its tone was becoming more and more similar. Arbor stood up and walked towards the treehouse she lived in. She skillfully climbed up her treehouse and carried the little white squirrel out. As usual, she fed it a few mouthfuls of medicinal liquid and stroked its round belly. In these 2 years, the little squirrel hadn't woken up again. 2 years ago, the fatal blow from that middle-aged mystic cultivator from Ani Prefecture had nearly shattered all the bones in the little white squirrel's body. After that, she had stitched the little squirrel up needle by needle, and poured the precious medicinal liquid into its stomach like it was plain water. In these 2 years, although its condition had improved slightly, it still hadn't woken up. Hence, Chow Mu fed it the medicinal liquid every day, feeding it 3 meals a day. Chocho, don't forget to feed it medicine in the future. Arbor wrapped the little white squirrel up and put it in the treehouse. On the other end, a cyan blue chick flew onto her arm with a quack. Arbor stroked its fur in passing, but before she could speak, she heard the sapling Chocho shriek and howl. Master, where are you going? Why do you need Chocho to feed you medicine? Master, you can't be thinking of. Master, don't die. Master, you can't go and commit suicide. I won't let you die. Chocho won't let Master die. Once Chocho started crying, the little water ball immediately burrowed out from under the leaves on its head. As soon as it saw Arbor, it started to cry pitifully. It looked like a blob of water wanted to get close but didn't dare to. It cried pitifully, Master, Master, don't die. I'll leave. I'll leave now. Whoa. Arbor looked at the 2 little ones speechlessly and punched the little Trent's little head. Who wants to die? The little tray ant and the little water ball sobbed for a while before they suddenly stopped crying and said in unison, Master, are you going to die? Arbor simply couldn't be bothered to talk to these 2 idiots. I'm going home. Arbor said indifferently, in the future, I may not come to Paradise Planet every day. The heavy responsibility of taking care of Chirps will be handed over to the 2 of you. Master. The little tray ant and the little water ball hung on her lapel, one above and one below. They exclaimed in unison again. You're going out. What, you don't want me to leave this place? Arbor asked dryly as he leaned against a tree branch. This place is indeed quite good. It's carefree, aloof from worldly affairs, and has no worries. Master. Of course I'm going out. Arbor slowly took out an iron tablet from his chest and looked at it coldly. I still have to go settle accounts with them, don't I? Even if I'm the only one left in the Holy Water Sect. It's still the Holy Water Sect. As long as I don't die, the Holy Water Sect will rise again one day. Chapter 488. It was just that she was in too much pain and wanted to escape too much. If she went out now, she would definitely see the wretched scene of Sky Peak's dilapidated walls. Because the sapling only dragged her into Paradise Planet, she would still be on the Holy Water Sect's Sky Peak when she came out. She didn't want to, nor did she dare to, go out. She even loathed this ugly world. If she could, she really only wanted to peacefully live out her life on Paradise Planet by herself. However, a bellyful of hatred might not be able to calm her heart. The entire Holy Water Sect's 800 disciples had one life. One day she would make them pay for this debt one by one. No one should think of having an easy time. Now I'll start with you. Arbor tightly clenched the iron tablet in her hand, wanting to crush it. She had repeatedly checked this iron tablet she picked up from the shattered Holy Water Sect's ancestral hall. The name of Guanlan City's Qin estate was engraved on the back. Qin estate. What did it have to do with those people from Shuntian Prefecture? Or could it be that Shuntian Prefecture's power was hidden within Guanlan City's Qin estate? That stooped old man who appeared in Dwelling Valley, did you die or not? If you didn't die, then are you prepared to have your bones ground to dust and your flesh to be devoured by me? Wrapped in a flapping red dress, she was like a ball of vengeful blood, scarlet and dazzling, directly pressing against the sun and moon. Caw. Weak Little Chicken jumped onto her shoulder and rubbed against her head. Don't go out either. Stay here obediently, Arbor said faintly as she patted Weak Little Chicken's chubby body. Back then, Qinghuan challenged 100 beasts alone and was incomparably brave, but it was heavily injured. Although she slowly recovered these 2 years, Arbor still had some psychological trauma. Caw. Speak human. The sapling grumpily slapped Weak Little Chicken's head. Why did this bunch of heart-crushing scoundrels always like to grumble and refuse to speak human language? They had to find the right target even if they wanted to act cute. Didn't they know that Master was an oddball who disliked cute things the most? Master, I'll send you there. I can fly fast. Newbie flapped its wings and shouted. There's no need. It's been so many years. A few days won't make a difference, Arbor said calmly. I'll go to 5 Moon City and buy a horse. The water ball shrank and hid behind the little tray ant, not daring to say anything. On top of the mist, 2 round eyes looked at its master cutely. Arbor suddenly beckoned to it. The little water blob immediately flew over excitedly and threw itself into her arms. I'm sorry. She had long known that her anger was completely unreasonable. It was just that during that period of time she really didn't want to see that blob of water. Could the holy water really make the people of the 6 constabularies so obsessed? Little Master is finally not chasing me away? Wow! The little water blob felt wronged and happy at the same time. Just as it was about to burst into tears, it saw its little master quickly take out a big bottle. The little tray ant was speechless. All of a sudden, the water blob held back her tears. Yes, for some reason when she saw that big bottle, the water blob didn't want to cry anymore. Arbor looked at her regretfully and put away the bottle in her hand. She turned to the little tray ant and said, "Send me out." The little tray ant immediately nodded with tears in its eyes. It had waited for so long for its master to finally let go and walk out. Just let go? The word let go was easier said than done. Once the seed of hatred was buried in the heart, it would grow stronger day by day. Chapter 489. When Arbor appeared on Sky Peak again, she couldn't help but be startled by the scenery before her. Ancient tree vines intertwined together covered the entire Sky Peak. Arbor's slender hand pushed aside the 2 vines blocking her way and squeezed through the intersecting vines. As far as the eye could see, the entire holy water sect was enveloped by the sapling's vines. Arbor stared blankly for a while before suddenly feeling her wrist heating up. When she looked down, she saw the jade bracelet carved with a pine tree suddenly emitting a lustrous light. Arbor raised her left wrist and saw a strong light abruptly activate. As if receiving some sort of response, a circle of fist-sized jade talismans flew up with a whoosh from where the ancient vines intertwined around the snowy peak. The circular jade talismans gathered into a ball and rapidly flew to Arbor's fingers. They glowed faintly and vibrated lightly. Arbor reached out to hold it, and her eyes flickered with disappointment. How could those people from Shuntian Prefecture and Ani Prefecture find the treasure pavilion? It turned out that at the critical juncture that day, the Maple Pavilion had already been enveloped by a talisman matrix. All the secret techniques and mystic weapons that the Holy Water Sect had passed down over the past 300 years had been stored inside the jade talismans. Until she appeared, Arbor touched the lustrous jade bracelet on her left wrist, which was also where the key to the Maple Pavilion was located. Without this key, all of the Maple Pavilion's inheritance would probably be buried under the snowy peak forever, never to see the light of day again. Thinking about it, she really was proud and aloof. She would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. Even if the entire Holy Water Sect was razed to the ground, those people could forget about obtaining any benefits. Chocho, put it inside, okay? Yes, master. The sapling knew that its little master would definitely be in a bad mood after coming out, so it hastily agreed and extended its branches to encircle the faintly glowing spherical jade talisman matrix in Arbor's hand. Master, I can build a wooden pavilion, the sapling said hurriedly. Little Tree said hurriedly, although it might not be the same as the Maple Pavilion of the past, at least it looks like it. Arbor nodded faintly. As you wish. After the Maple Pavilion was dragged into Paradise Planet by the sapling, the jade bracelet on her left wrist stopped resonating with it. It dimmed slightly and remained dormant on her wrist. Arbor reached out and caressed it again. looking up at the sky covered by the ancient vines. Only a tiny bit of sunlight could be seen seeping in through the gaps between the leaves. Little dots of light landed on the ground, making the whole environment look very gloomy and gloomy. Murong soon, I'll be of marriageable age in 3 months, Arbor muttered to himself. With a slight movement of his body, he drilled out from between the vines and landed lightly on the snowy peak. Xiao Mu's seemingly slow floating speed actually took no more than a few seconds before her slender figure landed at the foot of the mountain and entered Xianghe village's range. Xianghe village was desolate and devoid of any signs of life. Along the way, they saw that the ground was covered with withered leaves, and only a stretch of dilapidated walls remained. At this moment, a few soft voices suddenly came from behind the collapsed house. Arbor was startled. She hadn't seen anyone for more than 2 years, so she subconsciously still didn't want to see people. The holy water sect's area had long been deserted, so why would there be voices? In the blink of an eye, her petite body had already disappeared from where she stood. When she reappeared, a pair of lonely and dark eyes landed on the small slope behind the dilapidated walls. Chapter 490. There were 4 people sitting there, a typical adventurer team. The 4 of them were currently roasting some simple food around a fire. One of them sighed and said, "Life has been getting harder and harder recently. I heard that City Lord Wu has already given the order to start moving the city today. All of 5 Moon City's people will be migrating to the northern fortifications. We can't grow anything. If this continues, the entire city's people will starve to death." Sigh. Another person heaved a long sigh and used the branch in his hand to poke at the fire, poking a short and fat boy beside him. "You punk, what are you spacing out for?" The short and fat boy's bald head was barren, and his body was as round as a ball. His face was fair without a beard, and he was carrying a large iron pot on his back. "What's wrong? You've been spacing out." "Nothing." The short and fat boy picked up a small piece of sweet potato and fiddled with it. After a while, he raised his head and said, "Eldest brother, I came here when I was young." "Came to the Holy Water Sect?" Eldest brother was taken aback, but then he asked with a smile, "When was that?" "Several years ago, I guess." The iron pot boy scratched his bald head and smiled honestly. "At that time I was young and didn't know any better. I even pretended to be a girl, and came to the Holy Water Sect to participate in the test." After the 3 brothers were taken aback, they abruptly burst into loud laughter. "You brat, you're really ingenious." Second brother slapped his bald head and laughed heartily. "What are you laughing at?" The iron pot boy slapped their hands away and pursed his lips. "At that time, at least I could eat my fill and wear warm clothes in the Holy Water Sect. Moreover, the 3 sects were so powerful and everyone yearned for them. I also wanted to go." "And then? You? And you even passed the test?" What are you talking about? Don't say it." "I did pass the test." The iron pot boy raised his head, and a bright smile appeared on his white, dumpling-like face. "Xiaozhang, don't brag. It's not like I don't understand the market. I heard that at that time, although the Holy Water Sect opened its gates to accept disciples every few days, the number of people who could pass the Holy Water test every year was very few. What am I bragging about?" "I did pass," Zhang Yu said angrily. "At that time I was chosen by the 3 peak masters. Alas, in the end, we were still exposed by the first peak's peak master Murong. My father and I were thrown out." Zhang Yu poked at the flame and sighed. "Come to think of it, it's quite an interesting memory. My father has already been gone for 2 years. Seeing that he was a little sad as he spoke, everyone couldn't help but reach out and pat him on the shoulder. These days, who knows when it will be our turn. Second brother, don't say such unlucky things. All right, let's hurry up and finish eating. We'll go up the mountain to take a look. Although the Holy Water Sect has been sealed off, I don't know if we can dig up some food from the snowy peaks." "Yeah, I remember that in the past, the villagers of Xianghe village often went up the mountain to look for food. It's said that the animals and plants on the mountain didn't mutate much, and the wild mushrooms they dug up could be eaten casually." "Mushroom? Oh my, don't say that. I'm about to drool." While the 4 of them were laughing and fooling around, they suddenly felt a gust of wind sweep over and instantly rolled them out. The fire was also completely extinguished. Don't go up the mountain. An icy voice shattered in their ears like jade beads falling onto a plate. Chapter 491. I'll let you go on account of your relationship with the Holy Water Sect. Leave quickly and don't come back. After the icy voice rang out again, another gust of wind swept over and directly pushed the four of them out of Xianghe village's entrance along with their bags. The four of them broke out in a cold sweat. They crawled up and hastily retreated from Xianghe village's vicinity without saying anything. They didn't stop until they were very far away. They looked at each other in panic. We really had a narrow escape just now, one of them said while wiping his cold sweat. Another person nodded and looked at Zhang Yu with a complicated expression. Little Zhang, if it weren't for your story that touched that expert's heart, we wouldn't have been able to escape. We probably wouldn't have been able to return today. That terrifying aura just now made them feel lingering fear even now. From that voice, the girl didn't seem to be very old, but her cultivation was simply astonishing. Sure enough, a large sect was a large sect. No matter how many people had destroyed it, the remaining power was not to be underestimated. Go, go, go. Eldest brother, we should leave quickly. They were kicked out after hearing a voice and didn't even see who came. How would they dare to linger any longer? They hastily packed up their things and left in a hurry. Zhang Yu looked back at the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate entangled in vines and sighed deeply. Not long after the four of them left, Arbor's smoke-like figure stood there indistinctly. She gazed icily in the direction they left. Just now she had the intention to kill. However, just as she said, Zhang Yu's words caused her heart to waver slightly, and her entire body softened. 60 ebony talismans floated from her fingertips. They hovered in the air and abruptly lit up before disappearing into thin air. Arbor left with a flick of her sleeves. After a long time, a thin and weak little mouse creaked out from the crack in the wall and ran forward without any head or brain. Suddenly, a force blocked its path and flung it away while squeaking. A formless and transparent barrier appeared for a short while before disappearing into the air. Arbor slowly walked to 5 Moon City. The city gates were wide open, and the large group was moving at an extremely slow speed. It seemed that Zhang Yu and the others were telling the truth. 5 Moon City was currently undergoing a large-scale migration. It was just that the journey to the north was long, and they didn't know how many people would be left after the tens of thousands of people had migrated to the fortifications in the north. Arbor shook his head, passed by the crowd, and walked towards the horse shop in the city. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to buy a horse when he arrived at the stables. It was said that the wild horses that were hunted had basically gone bad, and the domesticated horses were all snatched up by the residents of 5 Moon City. Little girl, are you going north too? The boss was wearing a tattered jacket. He rubbed his hands and said, they all said that it's colder in the north this year. It's already snowed several times. I reckon most of them will freeze to death on the road, sigh. Arbor turned and left without saying a word. The boss looked at her back and muttered softly, she's just a little girl, yet she's so cold. Make way, make way, make way. Get out of my way. What are you doing? You're all blocking the way. Get out of the way. Berating voices rang out repeatedly. A few whips fell, causing the crowd to scream. What are you doing? An angry roar rang out. The city lord is here, Lord City Lord. The citizens shouted along the street. Chapter 492. The one who had been whipping his way over was a minor leader of the caravan. He had a ferocious and overbearing appearance, and it was clear that he was out of tune with the common people around him. Stop! Wu Mantian hurried over with 2 personal experts, narrowing his eyes as he looked at the violent minor leader. That person was the standard model of a round and round bumpkin. He was over 40 years old and wore a washed dark blue robe, but he had taken care of himself in a decent manner. Do you know who this daddy is? You, a trifling city lord of 5 Moon City, dare to be insolent in front of me? 2 level 10 experts immediately walked out from Wu Mantian's side. One of them grabbed Little Fatty and pulled him off his horse. Little Fatty cursed, you're rebelling. This daddy is second manager Chi of Northernmost State Uncle Zheng's estate. You, a city lord, dare to touch this daddy? So it's second manager Qi. Wu Mantian sneered and cupped his hands towards him. If there's anything you want to say, please say it properly. If you want to hurry, we'll make way for you. There's no need to whip people, it will scare them. Humph. Second manager Qi snorted heavily at the sky and glanced at the two level 10 experts with unsightly expressions. However, he didn't dare to criticize Wu Mantian's attitude any further. Since the city lord has come to cause trouble, I won't say anything else. Please make way for me. I am making this trip for Her Highness Consort. Second manager Qi cupped his hands at the northern sky. Our Highness is waiting for this subordinate to rush back and report. Well said, well said. Seeing that the other party had brought out some noble consort, Wu Mantian couldn't argue with him anymore. He whispered a few words into the ears of the two experts beside him, having them go forward and disperse the crowd of common people. Wu Lingxiu, who was only 8 years old, pouted her small mouth as she stood beside her mother. She muttered in a small voice, "Mother, I hate this person's ugly face." The city lord's wife gently tugged on her daughter's small hand, indicating for her not to speak. Arbor stood coldly at the back of the crowd. The commotion just now made the crowd even more crowded, so she stopped for a moment under the eaves of a house. At this moment, he swept his gaze over and saw that there were more than a dozen people escorting the caravan. In the middle, there were 2 wooden prison wagons. Each cart had 5, 6, 7 or 8 people locked up in the wooden huts. There were old and young people, big and small. Altogether, there were 12 or 13 people locked up. A girl of about 5 or 6 years old stood in the prison wagon, her 2 thin and weak little hands tightly gripping a wooden pillar as she stared at the people outside. The crowd began to stir. An old man beside Arbor sighed and shook his head. Sigh, they probably went to the dark sea to catch mermen again. How pitiful. Some of them are still children. Arbor's gaze fell on the old and young people in the 2 carriages. He saw that they were all looking at the citizens outside with anticipation in their eyes. However, even Wu Mantian, the city lord, could not interfere with Consort Zheng's matters, let alone a group of ordinary people like them. If they wanted to meddle in other people's business, they had to be alive first. Mermen? Arbor muttered to herself. The old man glanced at her but was shocked by the appearance of the red-clothed, cold-faced little girl in front of him. The little girl was dressed in a fluttering red robe. Her waist was slim, and her lips were clean and vermilion. Her hands were tucked in her sleeves, holding a small hand warmer. She had crescent brows and starry eyes. Her pair of beautiful pitch-black eyes were like 2 deep, swirling abysses that seemed to suck people in with a single glance. Chapter 493. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was a celestial being reborn. She had such stunning beauty at such a young age. She would definitely be a calamity in the future. Arbor only muttered to herself and didn't need anyone to talk to her. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, 2 or 3 people immediately started talking to her. Little girl, merfolk have always lived in the waters of the dark sea. They don't come ashore easily. As soon as a man spoke, his plump wife immediately twisted his pig ears and scolded, "Look, look, look. Why aren't your eyeballs falling out? Is she beautiful? Huh? No, not beautiful, not beautiful. Wife, you're the most beautiful. The most beautiful. Don't be awkward, awkward. Ears, ears." Wu, who knew if he would be struck by lightning for saying such untrue words. After the couple left, not many people paid attention to them. At this moment, the road was crowded with people everywhere. Many people were still hurriedly packing their luggage and clothes at this time and carrying baskets of things out of their homes. Merfolk have always advocated peace. However, it's said that the sea isn't calm these days. Merfolk occasionally come ashore to look for food, but they're probably caught, a scholar in green beside her continued. At this moment, Arbor's gaze met the little girl's on the prisoner carriage. She subconsciously reached out to stroke her chest. When she saw the holy water for the first time and the holy water rushed toward her body, her chest had also been like this, burning faintly like a spark. She felt a bit stuffy and uncomfortable in her heart. The little girl's eyes, which longed for the outside world, reminded her of the little girl who died in her arms 2 years ago. For some reason, she wanted to be willful. After the crowd dispersed to both sides, Second manager Qi mounted his horse and led a group of people on the road with his head held high. Xiao Mu gazed coldly in that direction before suddenly flashing away. The scholar in green was stunned. He only felt that in the blink of an eye, the little girl beside him had disappeared without a trace. When he looked up again, he saw that fiery red figure standing in front of the carriages, blocking second manager Qi's path. Second manager Qi was just about to flip out, but when he saw the little girl's face clearly, his saliva ran down. His fat face drooled as he gazed at the girl. His voice, which was strangled, was so soft that it made one's hair stand on end. "Little girl, why are you looking for me? Do you want to return to Guanlan City with me? Release her." Xiao Mu coldly uttered these 2 words. Surprisingly, second manager Qi didn't get angry and even laughed out loud. This little girl is truly adorable. There was no way they would let him go. "How about this, you follow me back to Northernmost capital. At that time we can discuss this properly." Pa. Second manager Qi didn't even see clearly how the other party attacked. He only felt a pain on his cheek before he fell from his horse and fell to the ground. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he fell flat on his face and immediately made everyone around him laugh. "Good." Wu Lingxiu's clapping and cheering voice suddenly fell into Madame Wu's hands. Wu Mantian's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the girl who was blocking the carriage with a look of disbelief. Wasn't that little divine physician from the Holy Water sect? The Holy Water sect's snowy peak had been enveloped by vines for the past 2 years, and no one could climb it. Where did this little divine physician come from? There was a hint of excitement in Wu Mantian's eyes. The Holy Water sect hadn't been completely exterminated. There were still people in the Holy Water sect. Chapter 494. Second manager Qi spat out a mouthful of blood. He clutched his swollen face and staggered up in disbelief. That young lady just now was her? All of a sudden, second manager Qi's pupils contracted. He saw a lightning-fast figure glide past his eyes. "What are you doing?" "This is Her Highness Consort Zheng." "She." Arbor raised her hand, and more than a dozen immobilization talismans flew up and stuck to the faces of the Zheng estate's servants. Intermediate-level talisman. Blue immobilization talisman. Immobilized for half an hour. Opponents 1 level higher than the user would be immune to the effect. Among these Zheng estate servants, only 2 were level 6 mystic cultivators. The rest were body cultivators and ordinary people, so the immobilization talismans were naturally quite effective. Thus, everyone saw that those fellows who had been baring their fangs and brandishing their claws just now all maintained a fixed position, standing there with a dazed expression on their faces. "Why you? What kind of witchcraft did you use?" Second manager Qi's shrill voice rang through the air. He covered his face with one hand and pointed at Arbor with the other shakily. "Why you dare to offend our Zheng estate? Little bitch, aren't you afraid of death?" Arbor ignored the hooting second manager Qi and walked to the prison carriage without minding her own business. An intermediate-level Vajra talisman floated in front of her. This was one of the new intermediate-level talismans she learned after opening the 4th jade slip. After activating the Vajra talisman, it could make parts of the body as hard as Vajra and indestructible. That's why, when Xiao Mu's hands gave a light tug and crushed the 2 large copper locks into powder like she was crushing tofu, second manager Qi's eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. Heavens, that young lady's hands look white and tender, bright and flawless. How can she be so formidable? "Come." Arbor reached out and helped the little girl out of the cage first. The 13 mermen filed out in a line. They were somewhat frightened and uneasy, and there were more or less injuries on their bodies. "I'm going to Shizhou City. I can send you guys to the vicinity of the Dark Sea on the way," Arbor said indifferently. "Thank you, young lady. Thank you, young lady." An old woman who looked older among the 13 mermen repeatedly thanked Arbor gratefully on behalf of the group of mermen. "How dare you?" Second manager Qi glanced at his subordinate who had been immobilized on the spot and angrily stomped his feet. He angrily said to Arbor, "You dare to offend our Her Highness Consort Zheng?" In order to catch these mermaids, he had been lying in ambush for more than half a month. Now all his previous efforts had gone to waste. Initially, He thought that by offering these captured mermen to Consort Zheng, he would be able to elevate the status of his entire family in the manor. But now, all the beautiful dreams had come to an end. This unknown little girl who came out of nowhere actually released all the mermen that he had captured with great difficulty. How preposterous! Arbor abruptly turned his head and stared coldly at Qin Lai with his ice-soul-cold pearl eyes. Second manager Qi was scared silly on the spot, and he shuddered in a daze. He only felt that the girl's glance made him feel fear and shudder from the depths of his soul. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to leave. Otherwise. Arbor's cold gaze swept across his face. You can stay here forever. She only wanted to release the mermaids, not kill them. However, if this fellow with the surname Qi continued to be so noisy, there was no guarantee that she would not change her mind. Second manager Qi was also a smart person. He glanced at the little girl's small white jade-like hands. Chapter 495. He knew very well that he was not even worth a fart in front of this little girl. How could a girl who could knock him off his horse with a single slap be an ordinary person? Although he was unwilling, a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Second manager Qi hastily mounted his horse and hurriedly rode away, abandoning his subordinates who were standing on the street. Everyone laughed behind him, but second manager Qi pretended not to hear them and ran out of Five Moon City with all his might. As he ran, he thought hatefully, I must report this matter to State Uncle Zheng when I return. After second manager Qi left, Wu Mantian walked toward Arbor with a smile and cupped his hands. Little divine physician, we meet again. Arbor saw Wu Mantian's family of 3 early in the morning and only nodded at him. If it's convenient, can I borrow a carriage? An hour later, Arbor's group left Five Moon City. It was not that she had to follow Wu Mantian's group, but there were too many people migrating from the city, so at a glance she saw that they were basically all people from Five Moon City. The people in front all had carriages and horses. The further back they went, the more impoverished the elderly, the women, and the children. Wu Mantian's family of 3 was at the back of the group to take care of these women and children. Wu Mantian specially allocated a rather spacious carriage for Qiao Mu, which was more than enough to accommodate a dozen or so people. The driver was a merman over 50 years old. It was said that he often moved on the ground and was also an expert at driving carriages. The older woman was called Long Xinghua. It was said that the surname Long was the royal surname of their merman race. However, according to Long Xinghua herself, she could only be considered a side branch of the royal family, and was worlds apart from the orthodox royal family. Once they conversed, the merman realized that Miss Qiao was a taciturn person. Basically, she would not respond to any of their words. However, they liked this savior very much. Especially the little girl Long Xianxian, who was Long Xinghua's granddaughter. She kept sticking to Arbor, holding her arm and sniffing her scent with her little nose. The merman girl at the side laughed. Xianxian, why are you always sticking to your savior? Big sister smells really good. Long Xianxian pulled Arbor's hand and said, Little girl, thank you so much for saving us. Arbor also realized that most of the merfolk were chatterboxes. This was especially true for Granny Long Xinghua, who had already thanked him 18 times. Arbor suddenly looked at Granny Long. Why did those people capture you? Why are you locked up in the prison wagons? The people second manager Qi caught were all women and children of the merfolk clan. There were both young and old. 2 or 3 boys were also quite young, so their strength was naturally weaker compared to adults. Alas! Speaking of this, Long Xinghua could not help but sigh. In the past few years, I don't know who spread this rumor. It is said that as long as one consumes the pearls in our mermaids and mermen, he or she will be able to live forever. Long Xinghua smiled bitterly and said, Actually, among us mermen, there is less than 1 in 10,000 who can produce a merman pearl in our bodies. It is impossible for most mermen to have shark pearls. Arbor nodded. They don't know? No, they know. Long Xinghua sneered. However, they are unwilling to give up and feel that they must dissect us to see if we have shark pearls. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.